Good evening, race fans, and welcome to Podium Esports coverage of the fourth round of Season 3 of Monday Night Racing presented by Napa, the Indiana 500K presented by Maconi Setup Shop from the virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Hi, I'm Taylor Burris, and joining me for Monday Night Racing pre-race show is, of course, Justin Prince, and of course, our producer, Ryan Bauer, with the cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Justin, we are at the hallowed grounds of Indianapolis Motor Speedway in the Dallara IR18, and just a great way to kick off more great racing action for the month of May at Indianapolis as we see some of the biggest stars in Monday Night Racing take to this 100-plus-year-old track. And I gotta say, it's very exciting to see these drivers out here putting up a great times as we get ready for qualifying.
It's going to be a great race, I think, indeed, for tonight, Taylor, because it's going to bring plenty of challenges where drivers are going to need to execute. They got to be ready to adjust to the various track conditions and the aero wash tonight. It's also going to test the ability for drivers to adapt from car to car to car, to track to track to track, as some have described to me for tonight, because if you can succeed to close off what's been an eventful opening race stretch of the season, you can compete throughout the rest of the campaign. So it's a valuable race for the championship as well.
It certainly is, and this is also considered to be one of the crown jewels for Monday Night Racing. Of course, we came here last season for a couple of great races, so it's great to see us continuing this stretch with the Indy cars. Now, one thing to keep in mind as well, these Indy cars are a lot different compared to what we're used to racing, especially at this track. And for those of you who competed in the virtual iRacing Indy 500s over the past weekend, one thing for sure that they're going to be working on is utilizing that weight jacker, especially when they're in heavy traffic throughout today's race.
Yes, indeed. It's one of the few cars on iRacing that allows you to adjust more than the brake bias, the steering offset, and whatnot. It allows you the opportunity to adjust to the various conditions around you, whether it's coming off the pit road, whether it's being in dirty air, whether it's trying to qualify. All of that's going to be very important to be able to get the right feel for how you need the car to be at a specific moment. And for many drivers, it's been a learning process to be able to make sure they have all those buttons set on their steering wheels to know that it's time to make X adjustment in Y situations. So expect a lot of drivers trying to pick up on that and learn as the night goes on to make sure they get those adjustments dialed in.
It certainly is, Justin. Another thing that these drivers can make adjustments on is also the fuel mixture of that, the racing amount of fuel that they can utilize during the race, whether it be under full green flag conditions, maybe a little bit longer in the run, they want to try to save some fuel, or even under caution, saving as much fuel as possible will be critical. We're guesstimating that these drivers, if they're up towards the front of the field, anywhere between 29 to 30 laps, but those who try to save fuel, maybe push it a little further, 30 to 35 laps. So we'll keep an eye and see what will come of these drivers. But we do have a very special guest joining us for the pre-race show. He is our Bryant Shock Technology in-race reporter from USA Today. He's a photographer. Mark Rabillas joins us. Mark, welcome to the Monday Night Racing pre-race show. How does your car feel, and how do you feel as you get ready to tackle Indianapolis Motor Speedway?
I'm feeling really good about tonight. I feel like IndyCar is something that on iRacing is probably my favorite thing to run, and Indianapolis is a track that I run it on a lot, so really look forward to tonight. The setup that they have going for this car is really good. I think it's going to put on a really good race.
Now, when it comes to this combination, what have been some of the major challenges on trying to learn for tonight's race and make sure you have all your in-car tools ready to go?
I think that weight jacker is going to be pretty important tonight if you want to run up front. It can make a pretty big difference. It's just a matter of nailing the setup for it and figuring out where you have to change it, because it gets very different when you're riding in traffic behind people versus leading.
Mark, as we look ahead and watching this race, what are going to be some of the key drivers that you're going to be watching? Maybe try to learn a little bit from in order to help propel you as the race goes on, because this is a 125 lap race. About a little over less than half of this race, or a little over half this race, will be what we actually see in the Indianapolis 500.
Yeah, no, this is a race that, for everything I've been looking at on social media, a lot of the competitors tonight are pretty confident, so I'm not the only one that thinks I have a chance. But you're going to have people like DJ Cummings, Matt Stallnick. They're going to be really good out here. They're good on these cars, and they've been practicing a lot. Obviously, Anthony Alfredo, anything you put him in, he's going to do a good job. So it's going to be interesting to see how he runs tonight, too. And Parker Kligerman, I heard he's going to be in this race. If he's in it, then he's obviously great at it, too. So it should be a great field.
It certainly will be. Well, before we let you go, Mark, is there anyone you would like to say thank you to?
I'm just thankful to be in this league. This is such a fun group of people. So I thank Ron Capps for introducing me to Ford Martin and getting me involved in this league. It's what I look forward to every Monday.
Of course.
I plan my schedule around it, actually.
Oh, well, there you go. That, of course, is Mark Rabillas, our Bryant Shock Technology in-race reporter for tonight's race. And he'll be back with a little bit later on talking with James Pike as well as Kenneth Bueno throughout the duration of this 500-kilometer event. But now, Justin, let's take a little bit closer look at the car that we're going to be racing here tonight. It is the Dallara IR18, which is utilized currently in the NTT Data IndyCar Series. We'll be seeing this car racing at Indianapolis here this coming week, and this car is by far one of the most extraordinary racing cars that we see on the iRacing service, and probably one that we've seen change over the years on the service from, of course, the IR05 to the DW12 to now the current configuration that you see on your screen today.
And don't forget about the windscreen that was inserted last year on the iRacing service as well. That for a lot of teams on the open side, I know took some adjusting to be able to build around. But for tonight, these drivers overall are going to have to know how to push the limits of this car, know what lines to be able to find clean air, know how to be able to carve your way through traffic, be able to drive behind traffic if you can't find the clean air pocket, since the air wash can be significant here for these cars for tonight. It's not going to be an easy race. And for those who have experience, they're the ones you need to keep an eye on. For the ones that are new to this type of car, you better hope that you put in the right amount of preparation. Otherwise, it's going to be a challenge to get yourself to the front.
And with that, Justin, let's take a look at some of the favorites to keep an eye on. Of course, one driver who I'm going to be keeping an eye on, he's actually a good friend of ours here with Monday Night Racing, is Matt Stallneck. Matt Stallneck is a multi-winner when it comes to running these Indy cars throughout the service, and he's also going to be one to watch. He's in the playoffs right now as he's looking to try to see if he can get a little further up into the playoffs after even with his win that he had at the season opener at Daytona. But he also knows a thing or two about driving these Indy cars. Who is someone you're going to be watching, Justin?
One of the drivers that's not actually higher up in the standings right now is Seth Eggert. He is somebody that seemed very motivated to try and win this race tonight. He mentioned to me on the sim in Indianapolis 500-mile races, he is 0 for 16. He wants to change that tonight by winning the Indiana 500K tonight. So it is one of his favorite combinations. I wouldn't be surprised to see him do very well, but I also would keep an eye on Adam Cabot. Quickest driver in practice, has looked very consistent and has been doing a great job on learning these cars as the night has gone on. So keep an eye on those two, I think, for tonight.
Don't forget, we also have the defending winner here at the IndyCar at Indianapolis, Parker Kligerman, who is running here today. And then, of course, Nick DeGroot, who is also a multi-winner in the IndyCars on the ovals, such as Talladega, Twin Ring Motegi, as well as Auto Club. So a good group of field of drivers here tonight. Keep an eye on them to see who else. But we also have a couple of IndyCar and Indy Lights aces in tonight's race, such as Anders Krohn.
Yeah, he has been very competitive throughout the night. I'm keeping my eye on that as well. So this is going to be a fun one, I think, as well for competitors. But there's going to be a lot of emphasis overall, Taylor, on qualifying, because track position is key if you want to be able to compete here at Indianapolis.
Certainly is going to be the case here, Justin. Of course, it is a 4-lap qualifying effort for these drivers, so they have 4 attempts, just like they have in the actual Indy 500, to see if they can set the fastest time in order for them to have a shot up towards the front row here at Indianapolis. Well, as we get closer towards the end of practice and getting ready for qualifying, let's go ahead and see if we can bring in James and Kenneth. And gentlemen, as we get close to get things started, who are going to be some of the drivers you're going to be watching? Okay.
Well, in terms of any drivers that I'm looking for, it is really hard to say because we've seen not only the real-life Indianapolis 500, but the virtual Indianapolis 500 has brought some surprise winners, has brought some of those dominant drivers. But I think if there's really anybody that you could probably look forward to maybe look at, I think I might look at Justin Melillo. He's running in the top 10 in practice. He's been fairly consistent as the night has progressed, but he's also been kind of hungry for that win. There's been a couple races this season. It's kind of been thrown out of his hands, especially Daytona, where he got turned to the back straightaway. Coming to at least the checkered flag. So if I were somebody like Justin Melillo, I think, or at least for me, I'd be looking for Justin Melillo to put something on and possibly put on a show. Maybe he could be a surprise winner coming tonight.
Excellent point to bring out there, Kenneth. But also, gentlemen, one thing we have to keep in mind that we have not touched on just yet is that these Indy cars also utilize the new damage model in order for that. And as we touch briefly on that, that's going to be something to keep an eye on. But James, your thoughts on the drivers here tonight. Who are you going to be watching?
So many people. Parker Kligerman's back to defend his title from a year ago, but there are literally almost 30 other drivers in this field that have a chance to win this race. And qualifying is going to mean a lot. Restarts are going to mean a lot, but this is one of my favorite races of the year, Monday Night Racing, and I'm just excited end of the day more than anything else.
Yeah, and go ahead, Taylor.
No, go ahead.
Well, I mean, the excitement rolls around everywhere in Indianapolis. Brickyard Indianapolis, the historic nature of this track, the historic, at least the race of the Indianapolis 500, and even some others. You can count the NASCAR Cup Series in there too. You can count the F1 Series when they went here for the U.S. Grand Prix not too long ago. There's so much excitement to go around this race, and I think to really contain that excitement is really hard. We're going to have to unleash it over 125 laps.
We certainly are. These cars, it's going to be probably the fastest race that we've ever had of drivers hitting speeds over 220 miles an hour, 230 even, when these cars get lined up here in the draft. Justin, it's going to be exciting. We are looking forward to seeing one of the greatest spectacles here in all of Monday Night Racing with these cars, these drivers, some of the biggest names in motorsports, as well as broadcasting, as well as media, here to come out and put on a great show here tonight as qualifying is already getting kicked off.
It's going to be a very competitive night, as talked about a little bit, where these drivers are going to have to deal with adjusting, make sure they don't get damaged, because that's going to be very critical. So the short chutes, it's very easy to miss the entry mark that you need to hit, especially with the air wash, and it eventually drags you up the racetrack. And if you get damage to these cars, it can knock you multiple miles per hour off the speed. In other words, you cannot afford to make any major mistakes here tonight. You can't afford to slide into somebody. You can't afford to slide into the wall. You're going to need to pace yourself for how you play this out for tonight. That's going to be very critical. And also, one of the main critical things is thinking about putting this race to where you work backwards, and that you think about trying to calculate your stops and your fuel mileage by going backwards through the lap count as the race goes on. We talked about being able to stretch it a little bit. That's going to be critical for some of the drivers to be able to time up when they come into pit and how they come into pit. That's all going to be stuff that you're going to need to be aware of if you want to win here, because if you want to win in Indianapolis, you need to have the right mix of strategy, luck, and skill.
All of those things will definitely come into play. When we come back after this, we are going to turn it over to James Pike, Kenneth Bueno, and Justin Prince as they give you all the storylines, pictures, quality, and racing action here at the virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Coming up next, Monday Night Racing presented by Napa will be giving you the Indiana 500K presented by Maconi Setup Shop.
Good evening, race fans, and welcome to Podium Esports coverage of the fourth round of Season 3 of Monday Night Racing presented by Napa Auto Parts, the Indiana 500K presented by Maconi Setup Shop at iRacing's virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway in Speedway, Indiana. James Pike, the voice of Podium Esports here, alongside Kenneth Bueno with our producer this evening, Ryan Bauer, and cameras provided to us as always by the great Dougie Beard. It is a very, very special night for Monday Night Racing, Kenneth, and one that I think we look forward to pretty much every year, because if we are indeed back home again in Indiana, and I am singing at the top of the broadcast, then I think that should say everything about just how excited I am for this race, and I hope you are too.
Oh yeah, I'm very excited for this one. I mean, there's no such thing that compares to Indianapolis, and even more so that we're probably about a week or less than a week away from the real life Indianapolis 500. The queue on both races here is stimulating, I'd say, for the most part, and it is going to be so much fun. I mean, we talk about so much of the driver skill level, the talent that we have spread around this field, and just the way that you can kind of put these combos in together. We saw a great amount of combos so far in the first opening races of the season. So tonight, to bring the Indy cars to Indianapolis, bring the best drivers in the real world and in the sim as well, it's going to be so much fun.
So much to talk about as we look at where we are in the world, courtesy of our friends at Google Earth. Not terribly far away from the center of the Circle City, but officially we are in the town of Speedway. And if you need to know how significant IMS is, it's a track that is so important that they named the whole dang town after the place. You look at what is a simple rectangle, at least from the top, but a very tricky place to get around across the board. But so many places that we could touch on here around this 2.5 mile circuit, and so many storylines coming into this evening. This is the first Triple Crown race of the year. Over $400 available to drivers if you finish in the top 3, and lots of fun to come a little bit further on the schedule. But tonight's all about the IndyCar at Indianapolis for this Indiana 500K before we take a week break and get back to it with the Summer Swing, which will kick off on June 7th when we take the MX-5 Cup cars to Lime Rock. But that's 2 weeks from now. We're not worried about that. It's all about tonight. You've got Parker Kligerman back to defend his victory from a year ago in this race. You've got 125 laps of action, but this is a very tough combo, no doubt about it, Kenneth.
It indeed is, and I think, like Justin said in the pre-race show, that so many factors that go into how difficult this race can be. And for any sort of circumstance, that's why it's so hard to win these marquee events, because of all these elements. It's about mastering everything all together as a driver, and if you have any crew members along to help, any spotters, crew chiefs, or strategists, whoever you've got, you want to use them and have their brain running at 110%, because that's what this race is. Now, it's 200 laps in real life, it's 125 laps here tonight, but these drivers have to be focused. They have to be at their highest level, or else I don't think they're going to be there to the end. That's really what makes this a crown jewel event in real life, Monday Night Racing as well, and it's going to be a blast once we see how well these drivers can do.
This, of course, is also Memorial Day weekend here in the United States, so a special extended pre-race for you this evening as we honor the people of our nation's military with taps, followed by the national anthem. You saw some of the faces that will be competing in tonight's race during the national anthem. And now, for the most famous words in motorsports, we turn it over to a very good friend of Monday Night Racing, Fox Sports' own Adam Alexander will get us going this evening.
We're here in the Race Hub studios, but we're feeling the love of Indy. It's time for the Indiana 500K. Gentlemen, start your engines.
Time to take a look at the Rowdy Energy Grid for this Indiana 500K presented by Maconi Setup Shop. And it starts with the Beef Jerky Unlimited Pole Award that goes to the 47 of Anders Krohn, who put down a 39.584 to take top spot on the grid this evening. So Anders will lead us to the green flag at Indianapolis. The rest of the field coming up here momentarily. DJ Cummings will start on the outside of the front row. He was part of the championship four that raced here at Indianapolis in the Indy cars in September. Ford Martin, Nick Sanchez on that second row, and Will Rogers, the defending champion of Monday Night Racing, alongside NASCAR ARCA Series driver Ruben Garcia Jr.
Gabe Wood for JD Motorsports will line at the inside of row number 4. And Arizona's Devin Henry sporting a throwback. We'll talk about that throughout tonight's race. He lines up in the 8th spot. Adam Cabot, though, was the fastest in practice. He will have to settle for 9th on the starting grid. Kerry Sexton, Podium Esports The Zone, will start just at the edge of the top 10. Back to row number 6, you'll find Brandon Brown and Penske spotter TJ Majors.
Parker Kligerman will begin his defense of the victory he earned in this race a year ago from the inside of row 7 alongside NASCAR Cup Series driver Garrett Smithley. Robbie Lyons and Seth Eckert, IndyCar specialist. This may be one of his best shots to win all year long. He's there. Josh Slate and Stephen Font starting in 17th and 18th.
Back to 19th and the top 20, you'll find Justin Melillo in the inside of row 10. Stephen Ellis will be to his outside. Garrett Miller and Matt Stallnick will round out the drivers beneath, or at least 222nd. Anthony Alfredo, NASCAR Cup Series driver, will be in the inside of row number 12. To his outside will be the number 29 of James Bickford.
Mark Ravillas and Chris Wilner, Indiana native. You know that the Hoosiers get up for this race in particular. He should be excited about tonight. Paul Sutton, Mike Clay, reporter for the NFL on ESPN in there too, alongside Michael Massey and Drew Welker, who round out the top 30.
And behind them to 31st, the final drivers on the grid tonight, Brett Baldick, Max Kennan will be row 16, and Raja Caruth returning after his finish at Daytona to start this season, and David Schildhouse will round out the 34-car field. Not necessarily 33, 34, just one more, just good enough here at Indianapolis.
Super exciting, I think. Let's look a little bit more at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. This track opened in 1909, 111 years old, one of the oldest racetracks in the country in Speedway, Indiana, just outside of downtown Indianapolis. 9.2 degrees of banking in the turns, no banking on the straights around this 2.5 mile, 4.023 kilometer racetrack. The race lap record of 37.895 set by one of the Lyondike brothers back in the 1996 edition of this race. We go tonight for 125 laps, 312 and a half miles, just over 500 kilometers. There are 2 quick repairs available to these drivers if they wreck, 3 Green 1 checker attempts, unlimited tires. Actually, we checked the server notes here, and it's a fixed setup race. Current time in sim is the default day for iRacing, May 15th, 2021, right around 3:50 p.m. local time. 65 degrees Fahrenheit air temp, 103 degrees Fahrenheit track temp, winds to the north at 2 miles an hour, and humidity of 0%. So warm track, otherwise very good conditions for racing, but this race will be all about patience. As someone who put down 1,500 laps worth of action between the fixed and the open setup Indianapolis 500s, I can tell you that letting off the gas when you get tight in the middle of the corner on lap 72 may save you at the end of this. But the question is, who will be drinking the milk in the Indiana 500K presented by Maconi Setup Shop, which is underway from the racing capital of the world. We're back racing again in Indiana at Indianapolis. Yellow flag out on the front straightaway, and people already in trouble on the front stretch. Justin Malillo involved, Brandon Brown involved, lots of cars around, and this was all after Devin Henry got the fence on the outside of turn 2 on the opening lap. So we'll have a fair few amount of folks using their faster pairs, but this is trouble, and this is the funnel effect that you see on the front straightaway here at Indianapolis. As we take a look at the replay, Kenneth, lots of action up towards the front of the field and a wild start to this Indiana 500K.
And a wild start indeed. You saw just underneath your screen, that was the 77 of Devin Henry who tapped the outside wall coming out of turn. He went to the exit of the pit road access road, but watch what happens up front. You're looking at Justin Malillo as he's working through the chaos. There's already some cars around. He gets tagged, a couple or at least multiple drivers involved. And again, we have this new damage model, so it takes a toll on the damage of the wheel tethers, everything that'll be affected with these cars no matter what you hit. And a fantastic crash, at least a big one here on the opening lap of this race.
Yeah, lots of trouble up towards the front. That's where they start. It happens and begins past the pit entry wall. When you get to that really, really tight and narrow complex, you go down the canyon of fans that is oh so unique to Indianapolis and unlike anywhere else in all of racing. And yeah, looks like one car, that might have been Ford Martin, that came across the track and ended up in trouble on the opening lap. Not totally certain, but one of the black and white machines ends up spinning across the racetrack into the field, and that's where one becomes a wreck of about maybe, 10, 15 somewhat cars in there. And lots of people burning one of the two faster pairs on the opening lap of this 125-lap event.
And you see there, it just became a domino effect, James, to start this one off, because as soon as the car that smacked the side wall just started Shane back up the track, sliding up, and then I think forced a lot of other drivers to be to at least try to adapt, and then a lot of them just get caught in the chaos. You see their car smack the side wall, goes sliding the track, and everybody just trying to brace for impact or to sneak through, but there's space, especially when these many cars are involved. I think it's a shame that a lot of these guys will have to burn their fast pairs so early. You don't really want to burn that off and burn a fresh set, especially here to start when there's 125 laps.
One of the big differences between the Indy cars and some of the stock cars that most of you watching Monday Night Racing will be used to seeing is that these Indy cars are far less forgiving. That's part of the reason why the faster pairs are there this evening. You can take a lump and you can take a hit in a truck or a Cup car or an Xfinity Series car, and you'll be okay. But any sort of damage whatsoever to these Indy cars, whether or not it's on the tray that rests underneath the radiator inlets on either side of the car, whether or not it's the front suspension, whether or not it's the front wing, you're going to have the car affected in some way, shape, or form. And in all honesty, it's really just the front wing that you can get away with some damage with, because you can come down pit road and in 5 seconds, you can slap a new wing on these cars and be all right. But outside of that, any other damage is really hard to fix up and can really significantly affect your car unless you have a faster pair in hand.
And it was made even worse, James, when the iRacing came out, because this kind of body style gives way for, if let's say you hit the wall or you hit another car, then you can pretty much have that door wide open to have a lot of that suspension damage, the axle damage, any sort of damage that could really put a lot of time on pit road trying to repair. Because when they had the DW12s, they had some of the bumpers on the back of the wheels to prevent any sort of, flying off of the rear wheels that we saw in some IndyCar races. But then they added that. You could replace that. It gave a little bit of protection to the rear wheels, but now you just have that wing up there and you just have the wheels exposed. So any hits from the rear, which I think we saw there with Justin Malillo, really affects that car. A lot of drivers down pit road, I think they're at least happy that they have the faster pair, but if anything happens from here on out, it may affect the rest of the race, and it could provide for some major attrition later tonight.
Be very intriguing to see how that end of this race pans out, because we will have attrition, we will have drivers that end up in trouble, and we will have folks who end up burning through their faster pairs. One driver who's going to try and avoid all of the above, the man who won this race 1 year ago, Parker Kligerman, called to the line by Bob Jenkins last May. And I think before we go any further, we send our best wishes to Bob as he continues his fight with brain cancer that was announced back in February, and hope that we get the chance to see him back at his beloved Indianapolis Motor Speedway in the very near future. But Parker, sitting already in 8th after starting 13th. He gained a few spots on that opening lap with all the incidents. We also can confirm it was Nick Sanchez that was the car that went around and started all of the trouble on the front straightaway. Also of note, Devin Henry slapped the fence coming out of turn 2 on the backstretch in the opening lap, so he too is down a fast repair in his machine. But the pace car has pulled ahead of the field, and DJ Cummings, who had plenty of speed in both the race we ran here in May and the Season 1 Championship in September, leading the field to green as we get back to Go Green Flag Racing in this Indiana 500K presented by Maconi Setup Shop.
And back under green they will go. So you see JJ Cummings now leading this field. Everybody got a snake trail to the inside wall, but it's all going to be about how you can set turn 1 up. And for Anders Krohn, he's going to try to get some of the draft off of DJ Cummings. Top 2 have broken away slightly as they head to the chute to the back straightaway once again.
There's absolutely no question that your best opportunity to pass in these Indy cars is on the initial lap after a restart. Problem for Anders Krohn is that he's not quite close enough to DJ Cummings to make the pass happen this time around, so he's going to have to settle in line. And once you get going here into the draft, as we ride on board with Ruben Garcia, it's about a maybe 7 or 8 tenths gap that you can sit behind somebody and still be in the draft. But when you lose that, that's when you start losing the draft, losing time, falling back. The problem, however, with these cars is that they are so aero sensitive that driving behind somebody in the draft is completely different to driving out in front of your own.
It definitely is, and that's really what's going to affect a lot of the handling in the race cars tonight, because let's say for DJ Cummings, he seems to be okay knowing that he's in clean air leading this field. But for Anders Krohn, for Ford Martin, Ruben Garcia, everybody else behind, the fact that they're in this draft means that their car handles completely different than it would all on its own. And that's really what we're going to see over the course of tonight, is that adaptation. Drivers trying to use some of the tools in the in-car as you ride on board with Gary Sexton. He's using that adaptation to start this race in the middle of traffic. So we're probably going to see that a lot here tonight, and for many it's going to be about how they can skill set those tools in order to be at least beneficial for them in the long run.
We look off the rear wing of Parker Kligerman, and you make a good point that compared to a lot of the other cars in iRacing, there are a lot of tools available to the driver in car, in this IndyCar, that allow you to shape the race. One of those tools, the fuel maps, the engine maps, which really do make a difference depending on what map you're running. You can sit behind somebody and gain maybe anywhere from 3 to 5 laps on a tank of fuel just by running an alternative fuel map that doesn't necessarily give you all the horsepower that you would want. As Stephen Ellis, Matt Stelmach battle for 18th and 19th. But allowing you to just save enough, and that can make a difference depending on how things go. That looks like Brandon Brown might have gotten loose on the inside coming out of the tribals. One car hits the fence a little bit further back off of turn 4. I think that was Anthony Alfredo that got the fence, and indeed Alfredo immediately on the pit road. He's going to burn one of his first fast repairs early on, so Alfredo in trouble. And one of the other tools, as we were talking about, that you can use, the weight jacker. It allows you to change the balance of the weight within the car. You can either slide it back or push it forward depending on whether or not your car is loose or tight. And it allows you to help adjust the way the car handles, which can be particularly useful if you're stuck in the middle of traffic.
It definitely is. And once you use that weight jacker, yes, you can try to tinker with it. We'll take a look at the replay here. This was Anthony Alfredo. This was especially coming out of turn 4. He was behind this pack, and we kind of mentioned it a little bit ago using the draft. I believe that was James Bickford who had got by. And then he gets through here, goes through 3 and 4. Car gets tight. You see him a higher line, though, in 3 and 4 already. And then merging into 3 and 4, he's at the same line he used in turn 3. Tries to avoid the car underneath. Smacks the outside wall, knows immediately he can go down a pit road. Almost got a bit of that inside attenuator, but seems as though he'll be okay. The only problem is he's going to be put 1 lap down to the racetrack. But to refer back to your point about this weight jacker, it is going to be very critical. I think what Justin Prince said earlier on the pre-race show is that that's going to be one of the most useful tools and influential tools if you really want to be the best here in Indianapolis and work yourself better in traffic. So many of them already have touched that weight jacker. For DJ Cummings right now, I don't believe he has.
DJ Cummings probably has not. Meanwhile, for more on Anthony Alfredo, let's go down to Justin Prince.
Immediately, the second he had that contact for the wall, the first reaction over the radio was using second fast repair coming to you. It was a situation he described as either runs the cars in front or trying and avoid them by yanking the wheel to the right. An unfortunate circumstance for Alfredo. He had been not happy with the car in qualifying and struggled on several attempts to try and get the car to rotate. And has been someone where he had said, I definitely need to adjust some stuff in regards to how his setup was for tonight's race in regards to how to race with these cars. In our words, it's been an adjustment period for Anthony Alfredo in this one.
A tough period in the opening few laps for Anthony Alfredo, who's already down both of his short repairs, and we're not even 12 laps into this race, but the yellow flag out again. Looks like trouble for James Bickford of the 29 machine.
And we saw him, James, falling back in the pack, and I was about to mention it not too long ago that he kind of had a loose moment, I think, off of turn 2, got slowed up, and I think was letting some of the drivers by, was getting around. This was a separate incident on his own accord, though. He's going through the short chute through 1 and 2. See right there, a car just stepped out, tried to correct it back, and overcorrects it, chasing it to the outside wall. And from then on, you'll see the onboard look. This is where it gets very violent. You see the car just step out. You said it earlier, James, that these cars can be very unforgiving. Small tap of the wheel, car goes straight for the fence.
That, to me, looks like a case where Bickford had adjusted his weight jacker to put more weight towards the front of the car, and he just didn't give himself enough weight on the rear end of his machine. And that's why that car stepped out from behind him. And once you step out, he tried to catch it, which sometimes works, but more often than not does not. And I would suggest that's likely the weight jacker, because if you get up behind somebody and you end up hitting the fence, usually it's because you get tight. But Bickford very clearly got loose in that setup, and that's why he is now rolling around with a very bent right side of his machine, and he is tumbling along with a completely bent and busted pair of steering arms on the right-hand side. But still making his way to pit road and finally into his box to use up one of his fast repairs.
And again, just turning back to the point that you don't really want to utilize these fast repairs so early. And I know small mistakes really can play into that, as the field will now spread to pit road. Handful of them not going to take service, handful of them are. But at this point, it's so tough to have to utilize that fast repair. It's kind of like a dagger to the chest that you kind of had it planned. You had that strategy. A lot of these drivers formulate what they're going to do, how they're going to do it. A small mistake or a small yellow, anything on the track can set that way out of whack and set it pretty much to throw it into the trash bin and forget about it, create a new one.
Trouble for James Bickford brings out the second yellow flag. Meanwhile, we remind you that coverage of Monday Night Racing is brought to you by our friends at Big Green Egg, the world's largest producer and international distributor of the highest quality ceramic Kamado-style charcoal grills. Big Green Egg has spent over 40 years mastering the recipe for the best, most versatile, fuel-efficient, and easy-to-use Kamado-style grills across the globe. And the Egg offers more cooking options than all other conventional cookers combined. With an Egg, there's no need for a separate grill or smoker, pizza oven, or rotisserie device, because the Egg does all of this and more to perfection. For more information, you can visit their website at biggreenegg.com. We'll take a quick commercial break and then be back with more action from the racing capital of the world. This is Podium Esports coverage of the Monday Night Racing Indiana 500K, presented by Maconi Setup Shop. When you want to be the best, you can't settle for the rest. There's a reason that Maconi Setup Shop is trusted by more virtual and real-world tracks and companies than any other setup shop in iRacing. With partners such as Stafford Motor Speedway, the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway, Five Flag Speedway, Speed 51, and more. When you want something done right, you go to the experts at Maconi Setup Shop.
With setups available for most series on both asphalt and dirt, built by a team of professional builders consisting of some of the top talents on the service, Maconi Setup Shop LLC has what you need to hit the track with confidence. Head over to MaconiSetupShop.com and learn why Maconi Setup Shop is the official setup shop of Richmond Raceway Esports and is partnered with some of the largest names in virtual and real racing. And remember, at Maconi Setup Shop, there are setups, but your victories.
Welcome back to Podium Esports coverage of the Monday Night Racing Indiana 500K presented by Maconi Setup Shop. James Pike, Kenneth Bueno, Justin Prince, Ryan Bauer. Going to bring you all the action from Speedway, Indiana. We are working our second caution of the evening as DJ Cummings leads the field, getting set to go back to green on lap 15. The top 11 drivers have not pit at the very beginning of this race. Everybody from James Bickford on back just came down over the last yellow flag. And Kenneth, that could shake up the cycle just a little bit. It's about 27 laps on your own for a fuel run here, 30 laps if you are sitting in the draft. Could make things interesting if this race goes green.
And that's what we're waiting for at this point, James. The part where we'll probably see a green flag run cycle head into the way, and then at that point, we'll see those drivers, whether they pitted a little bit earlier, how that's going to affect their cycle, and especially with the distance you can create here in Indianapolis, that may work for a very potent strategy, especially if you're near the rear of the field or you were in trouble in the first opening laps. Green flag, though, waves at lap 15. Cummings and Crone already on their way to turn one. There's a nice three-car battle, though, behind them. Ruben Garcia, Adam Cabot, Ford Martin, 3 cars heading back to the short chute.
Ford Martin had a lot of trouble on that restart. I believe Adam Cabot was able to get past him before the start-finish line, so we'll see if there's a black flag that comes from race control for that pass. Riding on board with Ruben Garcia, who sits in third at the moment. Cabot in fourth, Martin back to fifth, and Parker Kligerman already up into the 6th position, but the yellow flag out again. Trouble for Mike Clay and Seth Eggert as they get into it over in turn 2. The yellow flag comes out for the 4th time.
And again, I think we may have seen a similar incident. You see the nose cone and the wing ripped off the front end there. We'll try to see exactly what went down. And this again, I believe, going back to turn 1 and 2. A hit to the outside wall and then collects the other driver involved there. I think these two, at least the one behind, probably not as certain that Eggert does not want to be a part of this and didn't expect the driver in front to go to the outside wall. You're right on board here with the 57. The smack of the wall, not much time to react, and they both go spinning.
Seth Eggert was completely innocent in that incident. Mike Clay got tight, hit the fence, and there was nothing that Eggert could have done. He was just trying to ride the rear wing going into 2 to set up the pass in the back straightaway. That's going to be one of the most popular tactics drivers use in order to make passes here, because you can get such a good run and then bump it to 6th gear down the middle of the backstretch and go to the inside and pass somebody. That's exactly what Eggert was trying to set up. But no luck, no dice, and instead he's probably down 1 faster pair, as is Mike Clay already.
It's so tough so early in this race. You don't want to get caught or be a part of these incidents so frequently to start. And already this becomes our 3rd yellow for incident. So over the course of only 16 laps, we've had these 3 yellows, and hopefully at this point they can kind of settle themselves out and maybe the mistakes become less frequent. These guys are still warming up a little bit. They had a lot of practice, but remember, nothing really compares to the race. So for a lot of them, they're really just trying to adapt at this point.
And as we work under caution, it's time to bring in our Bryant Shock Technologies in-race reporter for the first time this evening. Tonight, it's the number 99 machine, the Bitcoin Mobile of Mark Rubilis out of Phoenix, Arizona. Mark, I don't think anybody's had the chance to get into much of a rhythm, but over the course of the practice race and practice tonight, have you learned a little bit about what you need to do with this IndyCar in order to get to the front?
Not really. Unfortunately, we haven't had enough consistent green flag laps to really get a feel for how the car is going to handle on a long run, which is what we'll eventually get to here. Right now, it's just about surviving.
Surviving and making sure that you don't burn through a faster pair. How critical do you think it's going to be to have at least one of those in your pocket towards the end of this race?
Hold on, race control went over you. What was the question?
How critical do you think it's going to be to maintain the faster pairs and keep one in your back pocket towards the end of the race?
Oh, that's absolutely huge. That's my main thing right now is preserving those 2 faster pairs. And that lap 1 accident I was at the back. That looked insane. I don't know how many cars were involved with it, but I imagine about 10, 12 people don't have 2 faster pairs left.
Fair and valid point. Now, for those who might not necessarily be familiar with your work, tell us a little bit about what you do on a regular basis and how you got into Monday Night Racing.
I'm a professional sports photographer. I do a lot of auto racing, like NHRA drag racing is one of the big things I do. And then last night I was doing NBA playoffs in Phoenix. I do a lot of different professional sports. It's a pretty fun job.
So lots of photos that you've probably seen his pylon on at some point. Also got the chance to see the triumphant return of Wake Forest University graduate and former player Chris Paul in Game 1 of the NBA playoffs between the Suns and the Lakers. I'll chuck that one in as a Winston native because I most definitely would like to see him do well in these playoffs. But we'll let you get back to it and get prepared. Mark, thanks so much for the time, and we look forward to chatting with you a little bit later on.
Roger that. Thanks, guys.
There's Mark Rabillas, the Bitcoin Mobile. If you need to know where he is, just look for the black and almost a golden orange. Shall we? I think David Schildhouse and I once upon a time called it marigold, that color in particular. And I think that's appropriate again, Kenneth, because that's about the shade that we're working with here.
Yeah, I think it is, and it's such a gorgeous car though, that Bitcoin machine. I think one of the that is shown in real life in the Indianapolis running for, I forget which driver. It doesn't come to mind. I can't quite remember, but that car has looked gorgeous on track in real life. It's looked gorgeous here on this one, and that color, I think marigold. I never heard that color as a kind of a phrase, but I mean maybe that's something you guys have. I can't quite understand it too much, but.
Let's be fair, Kenneth. You lived through elementary school, and I think you know, with all due respect to Rosart, that Crayola made the best crayons, right?
Well, yeah, especially if you had the 16 pack with the sharpener in the back. I think you were probably the OG in school if you had
64 pack or
64.
Die.
Sorry,
No
64
question.
With the sharpener. The sharpener, you have to have it.
Yes, with the sharpener. And marigold was one of the colors that came in the 64 pack. So you had every color that you needed in order to be successful. So that's where that comes from, at least in my mind. And I figure anybody who isn't admitting to that just isn't admitting that they had a childhood in some way, shape, or form. We'll stop the crayon talk, which is not what I expected to get into tonight. We'll get back to the race talk on lap 19 of 125 in this Indiana 500K presented by Maconi Setup Shop here for Monday Night Racing on Podium Esports. DJ Cummings back in the lead, back to the gas pedal, and back to green flag racing. We are at Indy with Anders Krohn, Ruben Garcia, and Adam Cabot in tow.
I think a solid start by everybody in this field. We saw that Ford Martin didn't have a good jump on that last restart. He seems to have got things figured out. As for the top two, they seem to be solid together, though Anders Krohn or at least Ruben Garcia and Adam Cabot, they start to find themselves in. Maybe they could scoop up some of this draft, put themselves as a target here for the top two, make themselves known in the spotlight. But as for now, they're going to be snake trailing to the inside. Here comes Anders Krohn with a setup to turn 3.
Adam Cabot tried to go to the outside of Ruben Garcia for a spot, couldn't get the momentum he needed in order to make the pass, so he'll slide back in line, and Garcia will maintain the third position. Meanwhile, Krohn looking for a way around DJ Cummings. He got a good run off of turn 4, and they will be side pod to side pod for the race lead entering turn 1.
And it's so tough here, James, to really set up passes here at Indianapolis because there's not many lanes you could utilize. We talk so many about the 1.5-mile NASCAR tracks and some of the multiple grooves you can use, whether it's all the way up to the wall, whether it's all the way to the inside. Here in Indianapolis, the preferred lane is all the way to that white line on the bottom. So you see Anders Krohn is right on board. He's trying to set up this pass. It's just hard to really pinch in DJ Cummings, especially with the way that these cars can get so aero sensitive and they can get damaged very easily. They continue to remain side by side. What a move by Anders Krohn, at least to keep himself to the outside. I think he may take the lead back to turn 1.
Krohn will try and clear Cummings, but he's not just there yet. More importantly, look who's entered this battle for the race lead. But he got tight though off the corner. Ruben Garcia was catching these two as they went door to door with one another, or I suppose window to window, screen to screen. We don't necessarily have doors on these Indy cars, but now after Garcia had to back out of it, here comes Cabot to the inside looking for the third position.
And Cabot, we talked about him being so strong to open the first couple races this season and continuing to put on this strength performance and going to the inside of Ruben Garcia. Don't think he'll make the pass complete. He'll duck in for 4th. And I can imagine here, James, it gets very tensious being side by side, especially for the race lead for so many laps, because we've already seen moments where drivers have gotten tight through the short chutes in the corners and they end up smacking the outside wall. I think that may be a big concern for Anders Krohn. Does not want to make the small mistake or he could end up in the fence with a damaged race car.
Very few people can run 2 grooves and run through the corner in that way here in Indianapolis. It more often than not ends up being a 1-groove racetrack in those parts of the circuit. And now Crone will slide it behind DJ Cummings and try and get a run once again. He's right there, so he should have a good shot coming down the front straightaway to make the pass happen. And here he goes behind the 10 machine, gonna duck to the inside, go to the outside, try and clear the 10 machine coming down to turn 1, but there's just not enough there, so they'll be next to each other once again for the race lead, and Garcia continues to close back up.
And that's going to be that problem here, because if you're going to be side by side, you're going to start to peek back in those mirrors and look for the 3rd place driver to potentially either use the inside, get some of that draft, and then they can put themselves as the race leader in just a couple of moves. And the problem here for Anders Krone is that he's trying to set this up. I figure that he's looking for this outside, then trying to let DJ Cummings go back to the bottom, swivel up the track, and then he can make the crossover move. That's what he tried to do off the exit at 2 and go to the inside. The problem is that Cummings has been so aggressive defending the inside, he's not giving an inch to the driver that 47. So again, they remain side by side for the race lead, and now Ruben Garcia can take a look at this and say, hey guys, I'm part of this too.
The ideal move here for Anders Krone, and we may see it now, would be to back up maybe about a car length and see if he can get a run down the straightaway to where he gets such of a leap on DJ Cummings that he can clear him before they get to the corner. And that's exactly what he just tried down the back straightaway. Just didn't quite have enough of the run. So maybe Krone will back out a little bit more. The problem is that if you back out too much and give yourself too much of a gap, then you end up getting caught in that wake that we talk about as he nearly got into DJ Cummings out of the corner there. But if you get trapped about maybe 2-3 car lengths back, then you end up in that space where you don't really get a run on anybody, and it becomes incredibly difficult to turn. And that's exactly where Parker Kligerman is as we ride on board the Stamford, Connecticut native in the 8th position.
And Kligerman coming back. This is the first time we see Kligerman in season 3 of Monday Night Racing, so making his return to the series this season. His first start for this season is the track and the combo that he won at last season. Took the checkered flag for it. I think Parker Kligerman returning to this race is very excited to be back here for Monday Night Racing competition and using sort of an unorthodox line through Indianapolis, running a little bit higher on the racetrack. But as you look from the rear end of DJ Cummings, it seems, James, that the battle for the first spot has simmered down a little bit. I think Anders Krone is going to try to hit the reset button, try different strategies. His car steps out at turn 1.
Everybody dancing around already through turn 2 in Indianapolis as Parker Kligerman just made a pass on Steve Affont for 7th. We now ride on board with Matt Schulding, winner of the season opening race at Daytona using the cars the NASCAR Xfinity Series. He's trying to chase down Steven Ellis, the Hockey News machine, and the fellow Eric Doyne car running in 16th, Stolnick in 17th. And everybody just trying to hang on to the draft at this point. If you lose it, you end up way, way back there and in a world of hurt.
That definitely could be the case. Again, just referring back to those small, little, minute mistakes in these Indy cars, that with the way these cars are so precise, it can put you way out of whack and can put you in a tough spot. Here's a driver, though, that has worked his way all the way throughout the top 15. It's a driver that started 33rd and actually pit started to begin this race. His 63 of Roger Carruth, James. We hadn't seen him until the first race at Daytona, but we had one car right in front of him. Believe that was Will Rogers. 65 he's around.
65, yes. It's Will Rogers, the defending champion of Monday Night Racing and the driver for Space Station Racing, Space Station Gaming. But trouble for Will Rogers. Let's take a look at the replay and see what happened, whether or not he got help or whether or not he just got loose. And it looks like this might be another case of the weight jacker being set too high, because this thing stepped out on him twice. Once in the entry of turn 2 and once on exit. And it was the spin off of the exit of the corner that got Will Rogers in trouble. And I can tell you, he just went around on the access road again. So weight jacker issues to the extreme, it seems, for the 65 car.
And at that point, when you make that spin and when it already happens, it's really tough to get it back into motion, get it back into a comfortable sequence for that race car. And I figure for the driver of that 65, it's not going to be very easy. You see him right there as Gabe Wood goes by. He's in a bit of a battle of his zone. There's the 9th place car right in front of him. James Bickford, James, we saw him into the outside wall, burn that fast spare to start this race. And now the driver that got into that incident with major damage to his wheels, he's back in this one again.
back in the running and waiting to see who for the back is going to try and make a charge in the front. Meanwhile, how about this battle for the third spot? And look who's arrived on the scene. Parker Kligerman has charged from 13th up to now the third spot. And the one thing that I've noticed, all for the 77 car, look at the line that he's running compared to everybody else. He's a groove higher than just about everybody on this racetrack. And although that gets you near the marbles, and I'd say the margin of error is much smaller if you're running that high up on the racetrack, the one thing that does give you, clean air on the nose, which makes the car significantly easier to turn. That's how Kligerman's been able to maintain and gain all this track position. And you imagine that car is probably set up to be pretty loose, but if you can keep it up there and not lose control of the rear end, this is a viable way to gain track position, to gain spots, and more importantly, to make sure that nobody gets the wake off the rear of your car easily and gets the draft off your rear wing.
And what's even better with Parker Kligerman's run, and especially if he's got his weight jacker set to very loose, is that a lot of drivers, when they have the weight jacker very loose on their race cars, they run the inside, then they come off of the banking to the short chute or the back straightaway. That's where their cars can step out. One car, though, got into it. That was Ruben Garcia. He gets pounded into the outside wall. I believe he collected Adam Cabot in the 17 as well. And we have yet again another caution after a short green flag stint. Two of the top running contenders get taken out.
Kligerman, I think, got tight underneath Garcia. We'll look at the replay just to be sure, but that's where this started. Contact between the 77 and Ruben Garcia's 03 car in turn one. They bounce off of each other. Garcia hits the fence, and then Adam Cabot has nowhere to go. But we'll look at this and see who ends up where. And yeah, you can see the 77 ride up the racetrack ever. He got out of the gas. You can hear him in the throttle, just trying to do everything he could to stay off of Ruben Garcia's machine, but just not in time was Kligerman to avoid that incident. And we run on board with Cabot. Nothing he could do as Garcia bounces off the fence, and there's nowhere to go for the champion of the Esports Racing League.
And these are reactions, James, at about 225, 230 miles per hour in sim. So just as fast as it's hard to make reactions in real life, it is very tough to make these quick reactions in sim for Adam Cabot, running at full speed comparison to Ruben Garcia, slowing down dramatically after the contact with Parker Kligerman and spinning around. That certainly put Cabot in a rough position where he practically had nowhere to go at the speed he was going and just had to brace for the collision. I think fortunately here they both do have the fast spares available to them, so they can utilize it. The problem is, again, just like many of the early wrecks, we're only 32 laps in.
For more information on that incident, let's go down to pit road and hear from Justin Prince.
Now keep in mind, Adam Cabot entering tonight's race had mentioned to me that he had never raced this car before and never had to deal with the aero effects that are this significant. His goal coming into tonight was to just stay out of trouble and survive to the end of the race, and hope by then to feel more confident to be able to push a bit harder for his speed. Unfortunately, to be involved in this incident, it's the first time, James, he's had access to an in-car adjustment that isn't the brake bias. Keep in mind, he comes from a stock car racing background on the iRacing platform. A tough break for Adam Cabot.
Adam Cabot trying his hand at an IndyCar, and yes, the Magic Man out of New Jersey had plenty of speed in stock cars. It's part of the reason why he's running in Monday Night Racing Season 3, but just not quite enough for him to be able to slow down in time. And it's something that I think a lot of these drivers will get used to, is most of the field will come down pit road for the first time this evening. But once you really get into the brakes on these cars, the lockup is pretty quick. There's a little bit of give to where you can roll into the brakes and slow down and not lose control, but it's not too hard to get these tires to lock up and at the rear end step out on you. More front brake in these cars in the ovals traditionally than rear brake.
Yeah, it is. And of course, with the brake bias, it's one of the things you can tune up here with the fixed setup. So a lot of them prior to this race, they can go to the garage option and then try to tinker with the brake bias, see what works most for them. But that entrance to pit road, I think, it can either be very tough or it can be very easy if you slowly work into it, because we have pit speed limiters apart from a lot of other cars in the service. So you don't have to be worried about where you are, how many miles per hour you're running down pit road. I think a lot of them have been utilizing that for the most part, but we did see a change in position, James, down pit road. Know that Justin Melillo did stay out on this lap here, but Anders Krohn got the jump on DJ Cummings, so he didn't make the pass on the racetrack, but he made it on pit road, so it does count, right?
It definitely counts in my book. So Krohn ahead of Cummings, but it's Justin Melillo, the Trucks and GG rider, that just picked up that gig at the beginning of the month. Stays out. He's about midway through his cycle. 15 laps in his car as far as fuel and tires go, which means that he'll probably have somewhere in the ballpark of about maybe 20-ish, just with the way the cautions have fallen. But it will be Melillo who will lead us to green when we go back racing. A few events to tell you about in the world of iRacing coming up this week. It starts tomorrow night with the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, their longest event of the year, the Coca-Cola 300 from Charlotte Motor Speedway. Free race will begin on the iRacing Twitch channel and Facebook and YouTube pages at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Then on Wednesday night, it's round 6 of Series number 3 of PCA Sim Racing from the Mid-Ohio Sports Car. Of course, you can enter the PCA Sim Racing YouTube channel at 8 p.m. Then at 9 p.m. the same night, the Dirt Sprint Car Championship Series heads to the dirt version of the Linear Raceplex. A 9 p.m. start for that broadcast on twitch.tv/podium2. Then it's the MSRA Premier Series from Charlotte Motor Speedway this Saturday night, coming up at 7 p.m. Eastern, their longest race of the year on Podium 2 on Twitch, and then the Facebook and YouTube pages of Podium Esports. Then the MPI Cup Series playoff round 12 coming down to the wire at Talladega Super Speedway, the Podium Esports Twitch channel next Sunday night, 9:15 p.m. Eastern, and then a very special race next Wednesday night on Fox Sports 1, Fox Sports Racing in Canada at 8 p.m. Eastern. It's the eNASCAR Pro Invitational iRacing Series using the next-gen cars on the Chicago Street Course that was announced earlier this year. We'll see just how well people can get around the roads of Grant Park in the Windy City. So we'll be very, very excited to see how that pans out. But for now, time to go back green flag racing in this Indiana 500K presented by Maconi Setup Shop. Justin Melillo out of Port Jefferson Station, New York, your race leader, getting set to bring us back to green. And we'll see what kind of run Anders Krohn might be able to get on the 53 car to try and wrest away the race lead in this opening lap after the restart.
He can try, and as they go back to green flag racing, put in that gas pedal, go back up the gear. Seems to be a great start, though, for Justin Melillo on some of the oldest tires in the field as everybody else down pit road. Everybody's separated, though, for the most part. See two cars about side by side. Think they might have figured themselves out going to turn 2, but Justin Melillo is still out front. His pink Dallara out to the first position as does a car around.
One car around in the back. I think that might be Steven Ellis. Indeed, it is the 46 car in trouble and with damage, and the yellow flag out again. Let's take a look at the replay, see what happened. But Ellis, I don't know whether or not he got pinched by Anthony. He did get pinched by Anthony Alfredo. No doubt about it. Alfredo gets tight, and Ellis is nowhere to go.
And at that point, just the pack racing that you see, and then gets right up to the outside wall. You'll see it once more. And you see right on board with Anthony Alfredo, just riding through turn 2. Here's where the trouble resides. And then right about this point, just goes right up to the outside wall, gets into Ellis, and then forces Ellis around at that point. And just a tough break there for both of them. Just again, the dirty air, the tightness of the cars just sets everybody into a different motion for Anthony Alfredo, as Ellis was making that big run. Just wasn't enough to keep his car tucked down low.
Lots of trouble for some of the other drivers in this field a little bit after this. They were all slowing up to make sure that they avoided the wreck. And you'll see Matt Stolnick here catch the grass, and immediately the tire digs in and he goes flying into the air. So that'll be a fast repair that the number 41 machine is going to have to burn through before lap number 35. Looks like there were a few other drivers who got damaged. TJ Majors had the left front wheel come off of his number 22 Indy car, so he's going to burn through a fast repair as well. And Steven Ellis has been pinged by Race Control as the driver responsible for our most recent yellow flag, and he will get his first warning of the evening. Just looking to see if there are any other drivers that are in trouble, but for now, Don't think so, but still a lot of faster pairs that people are going to have to pay attention to. And just looking at the back, Chris Wilner and Garrett Smithley already on 2 of 2, as is Devin Henry, and Anthony Alfredo also used up both of his faster pairs in the opening stages of this race.
And it's so tough so early again, just like most of the drivers we've seen collect damage and collect, or at least be collected in. It's just so gut-wrenching to having to burn the faster pair so early in this race when you want to set it up for the rest of the event, 125 laps. And for many of them, they're going to have to kind of reset themselves, and they're going to be put also in the rear of the field as well, so it won't necessarily be the easiest thing, especially when they're going to be mired back in dirty air. If they had trouble at near the front of the pack in the midfield, James, it's going to be even worse when they're tucked behind more than about 20 to 25 cars on the racetrack.
Plenty of cars coming down pit road towards the back end of the field, and while they come down, Justin Prince, we'll turn to you. Do you have any updates on some of the happenings throughout this field? Any more news and notes that we should be aware of up here?
Well, when it comes to Mike Clay, he has now reported that his VR crashed, which is something that is going to be very important, James, because for those who do not know, when it comes to your VR headset, if you have it disconnect on you, it completely cuts off all your senses of visibility. Clay is reporting that he had that happen throughout this race, so that is the where he's now at the back of the field and getting a wave right here as well. Anthony Alfredo not happy about that incident that just happened in that sequence. He had been reporting he was very tight just before that incident.
Alfredo made the point. He said, I was coming up off of the corner, and Stephen Ellis just stayed in the gas and tried to make a pass happen, which you can do on the outside for sure, but more often than not, it doesn't necessarily work. Now, lots of fun paint schemes, liveries, depending on what side of racing you come from in this race. But one in particular that I think we'd be remiss not to touch on over the course of the evening, and that belongs to the number 77 of Devin Henry, reporter for Sports 360 AZ. Also part of the team that brings you the MPI Cup Series here on Podium on Sunday nights alongside Kenneth Bueno, and a very special scheme for Devin tonight. He is honoring the very first Arizonan champion of the Indy 500, Jimmy Bryant, who won the 500-mile race, the Borg Trophy, back in 1958. And you can immediately see it. You look at Jimmy's car and you look at Devin's car, and the resemblance is a little bit more than just uncanny.
It is, and I talked with him last night after covering MPI, and he was talking about this paint and how special it was for him, and he said that it kind of looked weird transferring a paint scheme from a 1958 Indy car to a 2021 IR18, but nonetheless, the yellow, the red, all the designs, I think they're on point. He said it kind of looked awkward with the way some of the lettering and some of the sponsors, at least on the car, are placed, but from my perspective, it's a gorgeous looking paint scheme. The yellow and the red there, a tribute to his home state. I'm sure he's very proud to have that shown on track tonight.
Indeed he is. Justin Prince, what more can you tell us about the special paint scheme behind Henry's machine?
And I asked him why he elected to do this paint scheme, and he mentioned with Michael McDowell becoming the first Arizonian to win the Daytona 500, he was chatting with him a bit about Arizona Indy 500 winners like Buddy Rice, who raced the same kart track that Michael McDowell grew up at. And then he researched past Indy 500 winners, and Jimmy was the first in 1958. And that in turn, with him being one of the greats of his era, helped influence him, because the people who raced back then, in his opinion, are some of the greatest racers who have walked this earth. He said he loves to represent his state and those who represented my state at the highest distinction.
Proud Arizonan and very proud man is Devin Henry, and a very, very cool tribute to Jimmy Bryant, the winner of the 1958 Indianapolis 500 this evening, as we are back under green, and Anders Krohn is going to try and get the run on Justin Malillo. But Malillo, remember, he's no slouch in these Indy cars either. Last year, he picked up a victory in his split of the iRacing Indianapolis 500, so it's not like Malillo doesn't know how to get it done at the racing capital of the world.
And especially the fact that he's on a different strategy here, James, because he didn't go down pit road. He's on a 24-lap stint, so we could definitely, well, if, let's say, we get more yellows, or if we step into a long green flag run, Melillo can pull something out of his sleeve here, and I had him as a driver to watch for before we started this event. So right now, that Traction GG machine surely living up to the hype right now. Meanwhile, Anders Krone, I think he's got a familiar person right behind him, gets a little tight off turn 2. Here comes DJ Cummings now to pounce for position.
DJ Cummings is there and directly on the rear wing of Anders Krone, so there should be an opportunity for Cummings to get a run out of 4, depending on how he sets this up. He's going to run high, use the same technique that Parker Kligerman has done throughout the course of this race, but it didn't look like he got the greatest of runs on corner exit. Might be another lap or so before Cummings can put a move on Krone and potentially take away that runner-up position.
And again, just in the similar situation that Anders Krone is in, and when he was trying to pass DJ Cummings, it's going to be the same here for Cummings to get around Anders Krone as you're running on board with the driver sitting in 17th. That is TJ Majors, a Penske spotter and a driver, or at least a spotter, or at least a driver in this series, but a spotter in real life that had his chance to circuit to the Americas with Joey Logano just this past weekend. And at this point now, currently running well. He's been picking up a couple positions, running his way through the pack. It seems as though he's getting a feel for this IndyCar at the moment as everybody in similar small packs throughout the field happen. There's Roger Caruth, though, with damage.
Roger Caruth tried to get around the outside of Brett Baldock and got clipped over in turn 2. That's where the nose damage and some of the wheel damage comes from Caruth's machine. You'll take a look at this. It looks like Baldock just got tight on the edge of the corner. Caruth was trying to take advantage and almost made it clear, but just wasn't quite there. Turns down on Baldock and puts himself in the fence. So that is at least one fast repair, and this is probably going to be the second for Caruth that gets burned up as he comes down to pit road. Justin Melillo, though, still your race leader. He's clear out in front by almost a full second, but as you mentioned just a bit ago, getting the Plano, he will have to come down to pit road sometime within the next 10 laps or so.
And he definitely will, but this could also is in a different motion because everybody's on about 10 laps for their stint. So if Melillo can kind of change this up, especially if we stay green for the next handful of laps, or at least throughout this entire run, Melillo can be on the benefactor here. Most of the time when you see drivers on these alternate strategies, it doesn't usually end well for them because they go down pit road, they go a lap down, a yellow comes out, whatever may have you. But for Melillo, with that opportunity, he can kind of use this as a spotlight. Go for the end here, go for the bigger picture. I think that's what he's thinking about right now with his strategy. And once everybody goes down pit road later, he can use it to maximize some of that distance and maybe save enough to the end. Not exactly sure how many stops he would have left to make it to the end, but it would have to be at least some figure. Maybe he can stretch it to 1, as I think our eyes could be focused right now, James, on the battle for second. DJ Cummings got to run Anders Krone in spectacular fashion as Krone had to handle his race car.
Krone got tight. He's gotten tight on a few occasions there. Makes me wonder if he might go back to the weight jacker to free up his car a little bit. But in either case, it's DJ Cummings who now has that spot in the second position and is starting to run down Justin Melillo for the race lead very quickly. That gap has come down from 7 tenths to 6 tenths, could come down to 5 tenths, and we'll see if Cummings uses the Kligerman line and runs the middle of the racetrack in the turns to go catch up to Justin Melillo even further.
And again, this comes to another point that I don't believe we talk about so much, James. The fact that you're going to be wasting the tires. The tire is going to start to kick in over the course of this run, and I think it's played a factor into some of the incidents along with the dirty air, along with that aero wash that comes with these IR18 Indy cars. The fact that the tires are going to start to go away, and some of them, James, have elected to use the red ones on the side, or at least the red markers on the side of the wheels and or the tires, and maybe that could go into a factor. But again, when you're pushing these race cars, it's going to take a bit for the tires to wear away, but at the same time, going with the dirty air, it's just a bad mix altogether.
You see the air wash there. It looks like DJ Cummings had to fight it a little bit as he will ride to the middle of the racetrack. And yes, now he is going to run the Kligerman line and go center of the track and try and get a good run off of the corner. It's to springboard himself into a run past Justin Melillo. Not that time. And again, he goes center of the racetrack to just get some air on the nose and not have the thing tighten up behind the 53 car. So crucial is that in order to get a good run. Now here comes Cummings one more time, and this time he's going to draw even alongside the 53.
He'll draw even to the start-finish line of the outer bricks. Think he may make a simple pass. He's not there just yet for the completion. Now going to complete it through the short chute. I think one of the first times we see a pass made from the outside. And many times in IndyCar, we see the passes develop to turn one. They use that straightaway to their advantage. They end up going to the outside. One car, though, goes for the inside wall. That is Anders Krohn. He got loose off of turn two, goes straight for the tire barriers. He goes away, and he's down pit road with significant damage to toe.
It's a fast repair for Anders Krohn, but more importantly, no yellow flag as the 47 goes around. And just as you called it, Kenneth Bueno, you'll see it here on the replay. He got loose and lost it all by himself. You see Ford Martin making the pass on Krohn, and then all of a sudden, just had the rear end step out from underneath him in the middle of the corner, spun down to the inside. That's nearly a carbon copy of what happened to Will Rogers earlier in this race. And now Krohn will have to work his way from the back and get a wave around if we get another yellow flag. He's already one lap down, and he has pulled it behind the wall and is done. Anders Krohn, who had shown so much pace early on in this race, out of the Indiana 500K.
That's so tough for the Norwegian. They're so strong to open this race. And now the road to Indy driver, I guess he'll have to fend for the rest of the races in 2 weeks' time when we go to Lime Rock with the MX-5s. And he was running such a fantastic race up until that point. James running in the top three, going for the lead multiple times. He had a strong car, but I think just the handling just started to knock away. I think we saw it develop over the course of the night. His car seemed to be comfortable to start the race, and then as the laps winded down, as they go into a green flag run, his car got worse and worse, and I don't think the adjustments made things any better. So a very, very tough run for Anders Krohn. Meanwhile, you see a battle beneath the top 10. That's Adam Cabot trying to work his way back after a crash, and TJ Majors going to look to the inside.
Both Cabot and Majors have already wrecked once in this race. Majors has used both of his fast repairs. Adam Cabot still has one available to him, so that'll be important to know as we carry on in this race. But Majors with a nice run to get around Cabot, and look who's just behind both of these two in the 14th spot. It's Will Rogers as we ride on board with James Bickford, trying to make things happen and get around Anthony Alfredo for the 7th position.
That's something we're seeing with the attrition so far, James. The fact that when you have drivers taken out, drivers with incidents, especially with guys like Roger Caruth and Anders Krohn, where they got into crashes, but the yellow did not come out, that gives the opportunity, a door wide open for the drivers who maybe have crashed, got into incidents a little bit earlier in this race, to grab that fast pair and go straight for the front, gather all those positions that were lost by those drivers in incidents. So this is good for Will Rogers, good for Adam Cabot, good for TJ Majors, even good for Seth Eggert up ahead the road. That's going to be all beneficial for them because they're going to have these positions now, and as the field starts to separate, it could be even better for maybe potential incidents. They have more space to get around.
Seth Eggert riding around in the back, and he's okay. But one driver not having as much fun is the 52 machine of Garrett Smithley. And for more on the drive out of Ligonier, Pennsylvania, let's go to Justin Prince.
It's been a wild night for Garrett Smithley so far. Just recently reported over to his viewers, it's tight, it's loose, it's both. And before the race, he had been asking for advice from some of his fellow followers as well, as saying, I don't know what to do with my hands. You get that reference in terms of trying to learn how to drive these cars, where it came from the learning the in-car adjustments to if you shift down the straightaways to handling of the race car, was all stuff that was talked about and learned about by Garrett Smithley heading into this race. In other words, it's been a big learning process, James, for Garrett Smithley in that race car tonight.
Smithley in the black and red machine. The Talladega Nights reference, I guess we'll allow it. That's more of a NASCAR thing, not necessarily an IndyCar thing, but it works all the same. And even still, Garrett Smithley struggling for pace. This is now on board with Anthony Alfredo, who has come back to the front after struggling very early on in this race. He had to use up both of his fast repairs early, but he's got that car back in a good spot as Justin Melillo has finally come down pit road from the race lead on lap 53. You put him in the draft, that means he's likely stopping around lap 80 and around lap 110. So it's still probably a two-stop race for him. He'll probably need another yellow flag in order to have some sort of chance to make things happen. He'll come out of pit road. Looks like he's going to get himself lined up with some of the other drivers in this race. Maybe Brandon Brown might be the first one that he gets a chance to work with.
He's going to hope that he doesn't go a lap down here, or that he doesn't go even further down the running order in terms of being 1 lap down, because then he's going to really need a yellow flag or a miraculous pit strategy by the leaders in order to make that work. Here's Battles, so a little bit further back as one driver goes right to the outside wall. And again, it is the 29 of James Bickford. We saw him go around throughout this race, and there goes Ruben Garcia against him as well. Another 2-car incident, and now I guess that maybe saved Justin Melillo's race because the yellow flag waves now.
It, I think, was all right for him. Not necessarily everything that he wanted, but it's an interesting caution so far as he's concerned. And yes, now we'll see the replay here. Contact that looked like it might have been Matt Stallneck, but trouble for Ruben Garcia here, who just could not see, could not get anywhere, and could not get out of the way in time.
And such with the smoke that was already going out from Bickford's machine is just, again, the similar situation we saw with Cabe, just a little more maximized in distance, is the fact that there's not much time really to react, and especially with the fact that the smoke was there coming out of Bickford's machine, it was even harder for Ruben Garcia to kind of telltale where he was on the track, and then in turn gets the car worked up. You see the wheel tether coming off on both sides, or at least on one side, both wheels, and goes off there. And he already burned a fast pair to open this race. It's been tough for Ruben Garcia tonight. I think a lot of other drivers can say the same.
So Garcia in trouble. That will be his second faster pair burned in this race, and now he's going to have to be careful the rest of this race. And we're beginning to use that phrase over and over and over again, because just as we look at this here, I'll try and count as we go live. Anthony Alfredo has used up both of his faster pairs, as has TJ Majors, Devin Henry, Garrett Smithley, Chris Wilner, Will Rogers, Gabe Wood, Matt Stallneck, Stephen Ellis, Raja Caruth, Michael Massey, and Brandon Brown. So that's about a third of the field that's already out of faster pairs, and we still have over 60 laps to go.
That's the thing, works back to that topic. You don't really want to use the faster pairs early. We're only on lap 55, and a lot of them are forced to with some of the incidents that have occurred over the course of tonight's race. We'll see what happens, though, down pit road. We saw a change for net P1 down pit road, apart from Justin Melillo, who had stayed out on the last caution. We'll see if DJ Cummings comes out on top once again. I think with more separation could help his case. Everybody going to get the jacks up on the cars, going to get some fresh tires. I think DJ Cummings is going to be well out in front. But Ford Martin, though, nice push up to second, and a nice pit stop for him as well.
And a fortuitous yellow flag for Justin Melillo, who was not too far away from going a lap down. But as this cycled out, I had a hunch it might play out a little bit better than I initially let on for him. And that's exactly what's happened. He now goes to the race lead and, for the most part, is pretty much on cycle with everybody else. Same thing for Will Rogers, who goes around and is now going to take over the second position in what would normally be a black and yellow space station gaming machine, but tonight all red. So I have a feeling that there's a painter that's got a job to do there somewhere down the line, but he won't mind. He's the defending champion of Monday Night Racing and has put together a solid run in the opening few races of Season 3.
And for these two, for Melillo and Rogers, that was a good yellow to structure their strategy for the rest of this race. Because we saw Will Rogers, he pitted a little bit earlier than Justin Melillo. I think it was almost about a lap. There was some distance between the two, but both of them kind of had the same strategy. They were both on the same page in terms of the fuel run. And I guess for them, this yellow makes it even better because now they're on the same page as the rest of the field, so they don't have to worry, at least for Melillo and Rogers' case, to and maybe stress out that they're on a different strategy, that they're going to go down differently down pit road. Now the case is they're on the same page, and if a yellow comes out, if everyone goes down pit road, they're going to be joining the fray.
They will join the fray, and we'll keep our eyes peeled on what will come of that stroke of luck for Melillo's and Rogers. But plenty of partners to tell you about over the course of this evening. And time to give a nod to our title partner for the evening. This is the Indiana 500K presented by Maconi Setup Shop. And Maconi Setup Shop is a proud partner of Monday Night Racing, the home for iRacing setups and the official setup shop of Richmond Raceway Esports. From asphalt to dirt, Maconi Setup Shop's team of professional setup builders has it all. It's simple. You can't beat the best, so don't settle for the rest. For more information, visit www.maconisetupshop.com to get all the setups you need to go to victory lane in iRacing today. 58 laps up on the board when we go back green flag racing in this Indiana 500K, presented by Maconi Setup Shop for Monday Night Racing here on Podium Esports. Jay Spike, Kenneth Bueno, Justin Prince, and Ryan Bauer here bringing you all the action from Indianapolis, and we are near the halfway point of this race with Justin Melillo and Will Rogers riding a bit of a stroke of luck to fall largely on pit sequence with everybody else in the field, and looks like just about the entire field came down that last time by. So these cars all in, all set, all ready for what should be about another 30 lap run. We'll look for the next pit stops around lap 90 or so, and if someone really wants to stretch it, you might be able to one stop it from there, but in all likelihood this is probably a two-stop race still. Question is going to be who decides to try and play strategy and split this race somewhere in the middle, and who tries to wait for a lucky caution like Justin Melillo just got as we go back to green at Indianapolis. He took off well. Will Rogers, however, did not. And DJ Cummings will have an opportunity to work around the 65, maybe even before we get to turn one.
And a couple of drivers already utilizing the outside, and there goes DJ Cummings, gonna set up this pass to turn one. Can he make it complete? No, he can't. They'll work to the short shoe and turn two. Cummings will have the momentum, utilizing the 9.2 degrees of banking, and DJ Cummings will go straight for a second. Now his neck becomes the Justin Melillo. He worked on him before for the first spot. He can definitely do it again, but top three scrunched up to turn three.
This is brilliant work here from DJ Cummings, who is arguably better in the IndyCar than any other vehicle we race in on Monday Night Racing. Was right there at the end of the championship race back in September. He was right there at the end of this race a year ago, and he is now right alongside and to the right of Justin Melillo to go get the race lead at Indy.
And this is a different situation here because we saw Ruben Garcia lurking when the top two were battling, and now Will Rogers is even closer than Ruben Garcia had been, and he's going to go sailing to the outside. He'll go easily for a second, and he'll try to work on get the draft and some of that air from the back of DJ Cummings' machine. Meanwhile, there's a battle beneath behind. There is, I believe, Ford Martin and Parker Kligerman. They're working for top five. Gary Sexton tries to look behind as well. Another three-car tandem. They're trying to catch up, but at least they'll work for position at the moment.
Very intense battle just a little bit further back here, and I have to ask the question, given how quickly Melillo dropped back to third, is that a tactical move maybe by the 53 to get behind somebody, switch an engine map, and maybe save some fuel, gain a few more laps in the field?
It could. I mean, going for that draft, I think we talked about it, or at least Taylor Burst mentioned in the pre-race show, is that you're probably going to go maybe roughly 28 to 29 laps if you're in the front of the pack going 100% without attempting to save fuel. But if you're in the draft and if you play with the fuel maps a little bit, you can stretch it to about 35 laps at most. So this could be very well a tactical play by Justin Melillo. Hang in the draft, let them waste their stuff, let them waste their equipment. He's going to be right there on the situation, and if it stays green, he'll probably be the best one out of it all. They remain, though, side by side. Will Rogers not giving up for first.
More importantly, though, it's about a 4 to 5 lap difference between whether or not you're out in front of this field or whether or not you're in the draft behind somebody. And that, I think, is the thing that Justin Melillo is trying to take advantage of, while Will Rogers tries to use the outside and does to immediately clear DJ Cummings. So Rogers in the lead for the moment, but he'll give up the inside. Cummings will go back to the bottom. Rogers is going to try and hang up top and pinch that 10 car down on the inside. Make sure he can't get the run off the corner to take away the lead. But as it stands, they will continue to go wheel to wheel in Indianapolis. Cummings, Rogers trying to settle this battle for P1.
I think Cummings has already been accustomed to having this side-by-side battle because he just did the same thing with Anders Krohn earlier in this race, defending that inside line. He's going to give it up, though, to turn one. I think he recognizes that there's a car of lap traffic up ahead. He doesn't want any trouble to come out of it. Got very tight coming from turn one. He'll try to hit the reset button, make that separation, and potentially stay in his draft. As for the moment, though, James, a lot of these drivers, I think, probably using the same tactic that Melillo's doing, just hanging in the draft, creating that space, and possibly saving some fuel if we stay green. That's why you see a lot of the separation between around the top 10 as DJ Cummings now goes by once more.
Gabe Wood, the lap machine, getting out of the way and not trying to be a nuisance to anybody there. I think he may just try and sit up towards the front and try and learn how to run these things. But as they cross the stripe, we are about to approach the halfway point of tonight's Indiana 500K presented by Maconi Setup Shop. And as always, it is time for our midway race break, which is brought to you by iRacing, the world's premier online racing game. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat to experience today's newest form of competitive motorsport. Virtual racing, all from your home PC. Race virtually in Australian Supercars, IndyCar, IMSA, NASCAR, the World of Outlaws, and more. As it stands, Will Rogers is your race leader. We just crossed halfway when they hit the middle of the back straightaway that time by. He leads. DJ Cummings is in second. Justin Melillo holds the third position. Fourth belongs to Anthony Alfredo, and Parker Kligerman completes the top 5. Ford Martin rides in the 6th position. 7th belongs to Robbie Lyons. TJ Majors holds the 8th spot. 9th to Gary Sexton. And the last spot in the top 10, a good battle between Steve Lafont and Adam Cabot.
And Steve Lafont will be currently 11, trying to work for 10th behind them. Seth Egger in the 57 got involved in an incident, used his fast spare. He's now back running to 12th. Max Kennan will be 13th. Devin Henry smacked the outside wall to start this race. Got a fast spare. He's back up to 14th with David Schildhouse starting for the rear of the field, lining up the top 15. James Bickford, 2 incidents tonight, but he rounds up the 16th place position. Roger Caruth will be 17th. Mark Rabillas, our in-race reporter, is currently 18th. Stephen Ellis at 19th. And Joshua Slate in the 1 machine, lining up the top 20.
Garrett Smithley holds the 21st position at this moment. 22nd is where you'll find Brandon Brown of Race XR. Drew Welker is the 23rd place driver at the moment. Garrett Miller holds 24th. 25th belongs to Michael Massey, and Brett Baldock runs in 26th. 27th is where you'll find Gabe Wood. 28th to Ruben Garcia. Chris Wilner is 29th. 30th, Matt Stolnick. Paul Sutton, Mike Clay, Anders Krohn, Nick Sanchez. Your final 4 drivers at the rear of this field. And that concludes tonight's iRacing Midway Race Break. With over 170,000 drivers on the service and over 90 laser scan tracks and cars to choose from, iRacing is your portal to the racing world. Get on track today at iRacing.com. Back to race coverage in the Indiana 500K presented by Maconi Setup Shop for Monday Night Racing. And yet again, DJ Cummings alongside someone for the race lead. This time it's Will Rogers from Space Station Gaming trying to work the outside. Cummings on the inside. And Justin Melillo just riding around, letting these two duke it out for the race lead.
And as we move to the halfway mark, James, it's fair to say that we could definitely work our way into a green flag run. Maybe not so enough as Will Rogers now goes back to the inside. He made a crossover move coming out of turn 4, just letting TJ Cummings use that inside and then goes swiveling back down low. And Will Rogers will take once again the race lead. We'll see if Cummings has a mark for Rogers from turn 2, utilizing the banking at the top. But at this moment, we're seeing a lot of this separation. We talked about some of the attrition that's gone on here tonight. And for most of the field, we're seeing a lot of small packs, maybe 3, 2 cars, and some of them just 1 car by themselves running in the midst of the draft in a single line. So at this point, we could be very well posed for a potential green flag run to lap 125, especially with the fact that the separation has allowed some drivers to get in their groove, be right within the setups on their car, and make adjustments in the correct manner with enough time to do it. So maybe we could end up seeing some more green flag racing, but at the moment, I think top 2 have been fairly aggressive for the spot. None of them really want to give it away.
Working their way around the south end of the racetrack, we go on board with Adam Cabot, who's part of one of these other battle packs, as it were. He's right in the middle of one with Gary Sexton and then Steve Lafont on either side of him. And as they race, let's sort of work through our groups as they stand. It's Rogers, Cummings, Melillo, then Parker Kligerman and Anthony Alfredo who join the battle for the race lead. The top 5 are all pretty much in line together now. Then you go back about 3 seconds and you find Robbie Lyons, who heads the next group. That's where Ford Martin is. That's where TJ Majors is. And then from Majors, it's about a second back to Gary Sexton, and that's where Cabot and Lafont and Seth Eggert are. And then it's pretty straight until you get to about Raja Caruth and Stephen Ellis. They're in a good battle for 16th. Devin Henry leading Mark Rabillas and Josh Slate. Eric Smithley and Brandon Brown in a good battle for 21st. And then another group just further back between Drew Welker, Garrett Miller, and Michael Massey. So everybody else largely on their own on the racetrack, but Cummings and Rogers continuing to fight for the race lead as one car hits the fence. It's Parker Kligerman, the defending race winner, smacked the wall out of turn 4, J.R. Hildebrand style, and we'll see whether or not we get a yellow flag yet again.
We'll see what race control does, but it's going to be even worse to the fact that Kligerman's all the way to the outside wall, having to limp his race car around while everybody goes underneath. And now for Kligerman, he has to find that space to go to the access road and get out of harm's way. He's going to let a couple cars by here, coming to the short chute. Hopefully he has enough to get through, but I heard the smack coming out of turn 4 as he was with Anthony Alfredo. I think this is the first time I think we're going to see Parker Kligerman use the fast repair tonight.
It will be, and this was just classic, getting tight out of the corner. This is more like what we see when cars end up wrecking in Indianapolis. And the 77 machine just lost the air on the nose, got up in the fence and smacked the wall, destroyed the right front of his race car, and now is on his way to pit road for repairs. You can see him. That was the edge that we talked about earlier. If you can ride it right, you end up in a good spot. But if you lose the edge, there's even less of a margin of error that you've got. And that's exactly where Kligerman stepped over the line. Just too high up, too loose, got himself with the fence. Impressive, and to his credit, he's managed to keep the thing rolling with 3 wheels and has not brought out a caution and has driven his way back to pit road. He's still on the lead lap, if you can believe it, as the leaders get set to come past him. But Kligerman manages to make it all the way around without bringing out a yellow flag. Credit to the 77. That's a nice piece of driving there.
Yeah, big credit. But again, it works back to what we mentioned a little bit earlier, talking about the weight jacker, some of the tools that are used in these Indy cars, and at least suggesting that Parker Kligerman's car with the weight jacker might have been a little loose utilizing the top lane. I think that may have been the case as the car easily stepped out. He corrected it, but then at that point, the car was already headed straight for the wall, so he had no choice, but leaders made contact.
Will Rogers and DJ Cummings get together in turn 3, racing for P1. Yellow flag is out. A tough break for Parker Kligerman, but there's our first wild moment as the 2 leaders wrecked and make contact entering turn 3.
I said separation was going to be key. There was no separation between the top 2 leaders, and it was going to be a moment until one of them made a mistake, until one of them made contact with either the wall or the other driver, and this time it happens with the top 2 competitors. You see Rogers moves down the track to set up for turn 3. He gets into DJ Cummings, and at that point DJ Cummings already has enough damage that his car already operating on 3 wheels. He has nowhere to go but the outside wall in the chute. You see the contact here, and you see the journey straight to the safer barrier. And the top 2 competitors, they were running so well, so clean. The one mistake takes them both out.
That's the first time we've seen a wreck like that for the race lead this evening. I feel like it's a pretty safe bet to say, Kenneth Bueno, that that will not be the last time that we see something like that. As DJ Cummings and Will Rogers both are now in to burn one of their fast repairs. Importantly, though, for Rogers, that is his second fast repair that he had to use up. So no more free passes for the number 65 machine. Cummings, on the other hand, still has one fast repair in his pocket. And interestingly enough, speaking of fast repairs, highest driver in this field that is yet to use a fast repair, and someone that we've not really talked about all that much, but somebody that we might need to pay attention to. How about Robbie Lyons, driver of the NASCAR Truck Series, who's going to come down pit road now. Robbie Lyons running in the 3rd spot right now. He's not used a fast repair yet. Ford Martin's just behind him. He's not used a fast repair yet. Same for Gary Sexton. Gary Sexton, who's going to take over the race lead by staying out. Also, 0 of 2 fast repairs used. So, for as much as we talked about the drivers who have already used their fast repairs, maybe seemingly prematurely, I think we need to be looking out for the drivers who still have both of them, because it will mean that unquestionably they will get the opportunity to be more aggressive towards the end of this race when it matters the most.
And it does wonders for them to the end of the race, because if they don't use them now, they've saved them for so long that they can burn them later when they absolutely need it. And surviving here in Indianapolis, especially with the attrition we've seen tonight, is one of the keys to get to victory lane. We've seen it play out in the trend that we probably expected. For those guys, for Robbie Lyons, Ford Martin, all the guys who have yet to use their fast repairs, they can keep it tucked in the bank. That's fantastic for them to hold on to it and work it for later, especially when they need it. And that's going to be the key if they can stay ahead.
Keys beginning to show up. A race beginning to develop, more stories to tell on the other side of this break. You're watching Podium Esports coverage of the Indiana 500K presented by Maconi Setup Shop for Monday Night Racing from iRacing's virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
We are an industrial flooring company specializing in custom floors and drains. We don't believe in the one-size-fits-all approach to flooring, and neither should you. When you choose Tufco, we consult with you about your needs, industry requirements, and factor in numerous variables. After assessing your facility, we engineer your floor and drains, then install everything ourselves. That's the Tufco way.
Visit our website at tufcoflooring.com.
There's a place where fire and flavor are celebrated, where grilling traditions and new techniques are perfected. Here in Big Green Egg Country, you can grill it, roast it, smoke it, or bake it. It's the most versatile grill you'll ever own. Simple delight, easy to use, comes with a free lifetime warranty. Have it delivered to your door by a certified dealer in your community and start enjoying the ultimate cooking experience. Shop online for home delivery at biggreenegg.com. That's biggreenegg.com.
Welcome back to Podium Esports coverage of the Indiana 500K for Monday Night Racing, presented by Maconi Setup Shop. James Pike, Kenneth Bueno, Justin Prince, Ryan Bauer, bringing you all the action from the racing capital of the world. And tonight's race is brought to you by our friends at Tufco Flooring, an industrial flooring company specializing in custom floors and drains. Tufco doesn't believe in the one-size-fits-all approach, and neither should you. They listen to your needs and requirements and develop custom solutions for every client. And for more information, you can visit their website at tufcoflooring.com. Gary Sexton out in front for the first time this evening. He stayed out and is currently on a 19-lap run, so he probably has about 10 laps before he needs to come in. Justin Malillo and everybody else behind him came down under this yellow flag. They've got all the goods they need to go for another 30 laps or so as we go back to green flag racing. Can Malillo get a run on the 13 car?
This is the first time we see Gary Sexton leading the field to green. So again, another segment where another different lead has brought us under this restart. I don't think he's got the strengthiest one because right now, or at least the strongest one, because Malillo, Lyons, and TJ Majors, they've now put themselves here. They put themselves in the pack, and now they have a shot at Sexton, especially within the draft. Couple drivers, though, battling behind. I believe that's James Bickford and Roger Caruth, 12th and 13th. But as for right now, Gary Sexton seems to be comfortable running up front.
Oh, that's a big move there from Raja Caruth, and he's right in the thick of it with David Shieldhouse alongside him. Great work there as we'll go on board with Caruth running the Scott McLaughlin colors. Qualified 17th. He's going to be in the yellow submarine, the Pennzoil colors for the Indianapolis 500 on Sunday afternoon. But the usual PPG colors are what you see on Raja's machine, and not a bad role model to have if you consider how Scott managed to tear up the Australian Supercars world over the last 3 years. No less than 2 titles, the winningest driver in the series over that stretch, and it was enough for Roger Penske to give him the call to come over here and take up Indy cars for his team in America. So Scott made the transition. He's a rookie in the NTT IndyCar Series this year, and he's figuring out his way pretty easily. It's hashtag Scott Learns America, as his Twitter bio says. And Raja will try and make a huge move on the outside of David Shieldhouse. He blew past the 20 car, and Caruth now up into the top 10 for one of the first times this evening.
Well, if there's one thing you could take out of Roger Caruth's driving style is that he is aggressive and he is not afraid to show it in any race he competes in. I remember I saw him a little bit earlier throughout this race, saw it behind the screen when we were covering the backstraight at one point that Caruth had made a 3-wide dash to the inside for position, and he did not let go, and he completed it. Right now he's made that pass to the inside of Seth Egger, and he's going to complete it. So Roger Caruth using the aggression as a plus, and he's moved into the top 10.
Question for you, Kenneth Bueno. Do you feel like Raja knows any other of the fuel maps besides fuel map 1?
I don't know. I think he's on 150% all the time. I don't think he minds it either. I don't think he takes at least awareness that there are the few maps he says, I'm going to go with this one. I'm completely fine.
This is very clearly a case of OK Rudolph full power that we're seeing on Raja Caruth.
Just send it.
It's working well. He's up into the 9th position, trying to go get Anthony Alfredo for 8th, and then Steve Lafont would be 7th And those two are definitely vulnerable to Raja the way he's running over the course of the next few laps. As we go on board with the hockey news to Stephen Ellis out of Toronto, Canada, or Toronto, Ontario. So if we are to be proper with our provinces, good one though to the inside for Ellis. David Schildhouse is very, very red side pod. The Gamer Advantage Kligerman Sport Machine will drop back a spot as Ellis goes to 11th. He now rides just behind Seth Eggert. So two of the old stalwarts of MNR beginning to put together good runs as Sexton continues to lead on this 24-lap stint of his own as the field works lap 80.
And the field is starting to string out a little bit, James. They're seeing a lot of more single file action. These are more minuscule passes. You're seeing maybe methodical moves to the inside, to the outside, go for a pass, and then tuck back into traffic. That's what we're seeing a lot of the traffic here. The restarts, like you said earlier, James, is so potent, so crucial to making these passes. And then once you develop into a green flag run, it's a little bit harder to do so. And that's why you kind of have to pick your way slowly but surely through the field. That's what we've seen out of Stephen Ellis. That's what we're seeing right now out of Roger Carruth as you ride on long. There's so many factors to go in. And they also know that there's more than 40 laps left in this race to go. They know there's still a good amount of time.
Plenty of time. That's right. You still have about, 44, 45 laps to go, I would say. Yes, 45. Very convenient work there from Ryan Bauer as we're beginning to work our way towards the end of this Indiana 500K. And I think the big question, at least so far as the lead is concerned, is when does Gary Sexton come down, and will he have enough to make this on one more stop? Or is he going to have to find a way to split up these last few runs? Now, my money would bet that he probably can come down and wait, and there'll probably be a yellow flag before he runs out of fuel, which all things considered right now would probably happen about lap 120 for him if it goes green the rest of the way. But with the way they've been racing here, I don't think that's a pretty safe bet, Kenneth Puedo. Seems like we might get a yellow as the track now comes under clouds on the north end of the speedway.
And that could also maybe into what Melillo experienced, right? With Gary Sexton, if he goes down pit road as the leaders continue around, he can keep himself at least on the lead lap, and then a yellow could fly, and he could be on the same place as everybody else, just like Melillo was earlier in this race. So I don't think Sexton needs to panic in this run. He has to also consider that he's 27 laps in. He's leading this field. He's wasting the most fuel out of everybody. Not sure whether he's playing with the fuel maps in his cockpit, but he also has to consider that as well with 43 to go. We'll see what happens, though. Maybe Sexton could fall into the right hands just like Melillo did, and he can end up on the same page, and we'll have to worry.
You get a good shot there down the back straightaway of just how much these cars snake to try and break the draft and make sure that they maintain their gaps to the cars behind them. And while these drivers snake around Indianapolis, we'll snake our way down to pit road and see if we can get some updates from Justin Prince.
Very punny indeed, James, as David Schildhouse, one of the drivers that has been up and down the leaderboard, had a crash in qualifying several times over, and it told me where he had zero prep for this race on his end, and he said he'll probably pay dearly for it. Had some struggles early on, but he's been getting stronger as this race has gone on. He talked about how it's a long race with a slim margin for error, where he feels like a brush with the wall can be disastrous. So the job number one was to not beat himself with stupid mistakes. He's been able to keep himself out of trouble all race, and now he's in position to potentially knock on the door for a top 10.
It's not a bad spot to be in if you're Schildhouse right now. He's just there behind Stephen Ellis. You see the lap machine, I believe. That's, I think, Matt Staldeck who's in the mix there. But actually, Stephen Font, rather, from Behind the Wall Media. Similarly colored cars as we go on board with Robbie Lyons. But Schildhouse is in a place where he might be able to just sit and ride for a bit. You don't necessarily have to make your charge yet if you're in P10, but you certainly do need to go as we look at Lyons and see that he's running that high line that we saw Parker Kligerman first run, just trying to get some nose, or air rather, on the nose of his number 19 car.
Yeah, and for Robbie Lyons right now, he's methodically moving his way with TJ Majors. These two have been working in the draft, and Lyons is utilizing that high line similar to what we saw with Parker Kligerman earlier tonight, and it is really working as he's been catching up to Justin Melillo and putting that pressure. I think Melillo has to look in his rearview mirrors a little longer. He'll see, I believe it's a Jurassic Park themed IR-18 here in the top three. But Robbie Lyons, he's at least no slouch with super speedways and surviving. We saw him earlier to start this season at Daytona, the World Center of Racing. He stayed himself out of trouble, and he finished in the top 3. Had a fantastic finish from Matt Stallnick, Roger Caruth, and a handful of others. But at the same time, Lyons had kept himself clean. He survived the whole race, and he was there at the end, finished well in the top 3, almost had a chance to win the race. So at that point, Robbie Lyons has taken that into consideration. He's using that tonight, and it's certainly working out for him.
Robbie Lyons running the Quaker State Menards Glidden colors of John Menard from way back in the day, at the very beginning of what was then known as the Indy Racing League back in 1996. Those colors are probably best known as the colors that adorned Tony Stewart's machine when he won the series championship in 1997, just before he made the transition to NASCAR. But a lot of success those cars found in the early years and early days of the IRL, and Lyons going to try and bring them where they never quite could. There was pace and there was speed for those cars in the Indy 500, but they never quite got the victory at the racing capital of the world in the greatest spectacle in all of racing. And Lyons will try and do one spot better than he is right now at the end of the evening and try and get the victory tonight.
And a handful of others going down pit road. You see Sexton, he was the race leader going down, and behind them you saw a car sideways. Your eyes did not fool you. That was David Schildhouse, had a trouble going down pit road. You see his red Indy car right there. He stopped in his box, but he hit the outside wall just a little bit getting on there. Not sure if he burned a fast repair as a result, but he had a little bit of trouble going down. Seems as though he seems to be okay. But even then, James, you mentioned it a little bit earlier, it's not very easy to go down this Indianapolis pit road. It was not easy for David Schildhouse.
David Schildhouse in trouble. Justin Prince, do you know why?
Quite simply over the radio, too much weight jacker. He's not happy with himself right now, to say the very least.
The weight jacker bites again. It can save you in traffic. It can allow for a little bit of help when you're running behind people to loosen up the race car, but it can get you in trouble as well. And Schildhouse now a lap down and out of fast repairs, and it is a much significantly taller mountain to climb for the 20 car if he wants to win this race.
And right now, you're seeing the battle for first develop. These two drivers now getting fairly aggressive. Justin Melillo ducks underneath. Robbie Lyons to the race lead. Take that as a different lead change here in this race out of the handful we've seen so far. In the first 90 laps of this event, one car goes to the inside wall. Not sure exactly who that might have been. I believe it's Seth Eggert, who went around in the 57. Indeed it is. His known code completely ripped off. Similar issue to what we saw with Rogers and Anders Krohn tonight.
I have a feeling that with Eggert, that was a weight jacker issue too. We'll take a look at the replay and see what happened to the 57 car. This was over in turn 2, and you can see the rear end step out once over in the exit of turn 1, which is usually a pretty telltale sign because it gets even worse out of 2. He ends up in the fence, and how many times have we seen that tonight? I think that's the third time we've seen that particular incident happen where somebody loses it out of 2, wrecks, and now is forced to use a fast repair. Eggert will fall a lap down and will burn his second and final fast repair of the evening.
That's the same thing, James, that happened to Will Rogers earlier tonight, and it wasn't even just getting loose off turn 2. It was also getting loose, having an issue coming to turn 1 in the short chute. We saw Rogers do the same thing when he went around, that he got his car a little bit loose. He was able to catch it. The problem came to turn 2, setting that up and being all the way down to the inside for the chute, so he doesn't get the optimal line. And then at that point, it doesn't make things any better. He goes around. But how about the push up front by TJ Majors, using lap traffic as a door to push through? TJ Majors, we saw him a little bit earlier in this race with damage involved in an incident. He's now up to second.
Majors to second, riding behind Lyons. Good battle a little bit further back as Justin Melillo is going to clear the lap machine of Chris Wilner, as will Adam Cabot, who we talked about briefly over the course of this race. It is beginning to rise to the front of the field as the laps begin to wind down. Majors now sitting behind Lyons, waiting to make his move. As you ride on board with Cabot, you see some action behind. Raja Caruth beginning to make a charge, and Majors has decided to sit behind Cabot as Chris Wilner, it sounds like, just got the fence and ended up in trouble, and that will be night over for the Indiana native. A tough break for him in the Monday night racing event that we know matters to him more than all the rest, and he just overturned the car off the corner. Tough break, though, for the 26 machine. He will finish this race likely in the ballpark of P30. So Wilner's done. That's one more car out of this race, and that will put us with about 29 cars left running on the racetrack, and Robbie Lyons and TJ Majors still your race leaders. But how about Raja Karuth? I think we'd be remiss not to talk about the Washington, D.C. native. He has climbed through this field in this green flag run and through the night as well. He started dead last on the field, but there's trouble on the racetrack. Parker Kligerman is in trouble again. The 77 got the fence one more time, and we are under yellow once again at Indy.
Incident out of turn 4. This was James. Similar to the big incident we saw to start this race, Kligerman gets into trouble. You see him here get loose. Oh, tried to catch the car and then could not, and goes barreling in. There's a car right there. I believe it could have been Schildhouse with damage. Indeed it was. He got a piece of this crash from Parker Kligerman. So Schildhouse had already burned up a fast spare to this point. Or he's actually burned both, as a matter of fact. I think this one could indeed take him out of the race, and he just barely gets clipped by Kligerman on the way there. So rough there for Schildhouse, who was trying to regain on an incident down pit road.
David Schildhouse hits the boss man, and it will end Schildhouse's night, I believe. I think he was already out of fast repairs before this race had hit the most recent yellow flag, and Parker Kligerman, I think, is now on his second, and it could be worse. That could be game over for Kligerman's chances to at least win this race, even if he does get back out front, because we're starting to get to the point where you need to be near the front in order to have a shot at this. 30 laps to go. There's some racing that you can do, but we're starting to get to the point where track position really is going to matter.
It's going to matter, and I think we're probably going to see the aggression start to lift up when we get on these restarts, because over the course of the night we've seen some moves to the inside, to the outside. It's only been a rarity for some drivers, and most everybody stays single file. They set themselves up for the first shoot of the racetrack. But now that we're getting into the final 30 laps, it is now go time. You have to start pushing it a little more, especially if you're in the midst of the mid pack. You want to be up at the front. It'll start here though, James. Right now on pit road, Robbie Lyons going to lead a good amount of the field down.
So Robbie Lyons will come down and bring pretty much everybody on the lead lap in for service. They want about a 20-lap run, so everybody comes down. It's a tough break for Gary Sexton, who will stay out on the racetrack and is going to presumably take the race lead. Well, actually not quite, because Mark Rabillas has stayed out on the racetrack, so the 99 car will lead his first lap of the evening, and it will send Sexton up to second as everybody comes down pit road for service.
And this is going to be quite possibly one of the biggest pit stops of the night. Handful of drivers already out and away. Lyons is going to be the first one, presumably, and he is. Him and TJ Majors go 1 and 2. But how about Adam Cabot? A run back through this field, got involved in an incident tonight. We've seen him kind of bounce around this field so far, and a nice pit stop. It was 8.1 seconds, tied it with TJ Majors, and a little bit faster than Robbie Lyons. Good job by the pit crew, the virtual pit crew there. The driver, the 17, he ends up third out of pit road.
Good work for Robbie Lyons' pit crew, but let's go back to our Bryant Shock Technologies in-race reporter, Mark Rabillas, who happens to be the race leader, and let's ask the obvious question. It's a strategy game you're playing here, so explain to us at home the call behind staying out on this yellow flag. Doesn't want to talk, guys. Keeping his cards close to his chest is Mark Rabillas. We'll try that one more time. Mark Rabillas, this is James Pike up on the booth for Podium. Got a copy?
Hey guys, I got you. A lot of people are talking, so it's hard to hear.
There we go. Gotcha. Okay. Fair enough. But we'll ask the same question again. Just take us through the strategy decision and your choice to stay out this yellow.
I'm actually about to go in and pit. I'm just because we're close on making it on fuel, but I'm also banking on there being some green-white checkered overtime action. So I just wanted to squeeze every little bit out of the car that I could.
So this isn't really about a track position thing. This is more about making sure you can make it to the end. And if you come down now, this will be a 29-lap run that you'll need to make, minus the green-white checkered. So you should be in range at the end of this, no?
Yeah, no, it should be interesting to see what happens here. And I still have both my fast repair. I know a lot of people don't even have any left, so should be good.
Are you worried about having to make a big charge through the field, or are you hoping that you might see a few wrecks where you might gain some spots in order to get back up towards the front?
Yeah, no, my whole plan is to gain spots via everybody wrecking out, because the tempo is going to be turning up here. We got 29 laps to go, so I think it's going to start getting a lot crazier. People aren't going to be giving up spaces and being nice anymore.
Might not be the worst strategy in the world. Just wait for the race to come to you. We'll let you get out there and see how it pans out, Mark. Thanks for the time this evening, and who knows, we might be talking to you a little bit later.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
It's Mark Rubilis, racing photographer in real life for many, many different series and events, including the NHRA, the NBA playoffs that he talked about earlier. And tonight, a driver in Monday Night Racing behind the wheel of the Bitcoin machine, number 99, and now out on the racetrack and good to go on fuel. Very important to note there. Of note, and as an extension of that point, the one driver probably not good to go on fuel and not even just on the edge. Your race leader, Gary Sexton, decided to stay out. I wonder if he may be thinking we might get another yellow flag before this race ends.
It very well be. He has to hope for a yellow, and just like Mark said, he's going to be waiting for the wrecks to start coming to gain position, and he's already anticipating some yellow flags to end this one out, especially in the green-white checkered territory. So we'll see what happens, though. A solid start for Gary Sexton. He's going to wait for the pace car. A peculiar start here, but nonetheless, he's on the gas. 3 wide for position behind.
That completed absolute chaos amongst the back. We'll see if there are any penalties for anyone passing to the inside before they cross the start-finish line, but they are 2 by 2. Here comes Rajat Karuth to take advantage of all of it on the outside.
Robbie Lyons had nowhere to go because he was trying to react to what happened with Gary Sexton slowing up on the restart, and now Karuth using the aggression. He's to the outside of Gary Sexton, and they both hit wheels, but they will stay maintained. Raja Karuth to the race lead in turn 3.
110% racing from Raja Karuth, and the nation's capital native is out in front in the Indiana 500K presented by Maconi setup shop for the first time tonight. What a restart for the man behind the wheel of the 3-car, the PPG paints machine, and carrying the colors of Scott McLaughlin. It's Raja Karuth now leading in Indianapolis.
And like you said, James, the restarts are so crucial. Karuth used every bit of advantage on that restart, and the little blunder there by Gary Sexton, Robbie Lyons, and a handful of others with the pace car allowed Karuth to kind of push his way and bully his way through the field, and now it has paid dividends. He's up to the front of this race, and now Gary Sexton has more to worry about because formerly second place TJ Majors, he's now starting to pounce.
TJ Majors all over Gary Sexton. Meanwhile, for more on Raja's restart, let's go to Justin Prince.
And a big surprise face from Raja Karuth after that tire-to-tire contact with Gary Sexton. Remember, guys, he started from the pit lane after missing the start for this race. He's had to claw his way through the field. He's been doing so with the help of his spotter, Caden Rush, and has also been very loose when it comes to his flexibility, wanting to be flexible on the lines and wanting to be very calm, cool, and collected. He's been trying to have fun tonight, and you can tell with how he is now, he has been smiling much of this race.
Raja Karuth might be having the time of his Monday Night Racing career at this moment. I don't know if he's ever looked that good at a restart in any of the races that we've seen on Podium Esports in Season 2 or Season 3. The question, though, as it is for I think just about everybody that's running on their own, if he runs Fuel Map 1 all the way out, does he have enough fuel to make it to the end?
And what makes it even more concerning here, James, is that these drivers pitted with about, I'd say, roughly 30 to 29 laps to go. And like you talked about a little bit earlier, the run, if you're running all the way at the front of the field, can go up to about 28 if you have not played with the fuel maps or if you've not decided to save any fuel. I think for the most part, the yellow flag allowed a lot of drivers to acknowledge the fact that they may get it close and try to save a little bit of extra gas to go to the checkered flag. But for Raja Karuth, he used that opportunity, he went for it, and now he is currently leading this race. You see on board a little bit further back beneath the top 5, a couple drivers fighting for position, but mostly everyone's single file as separation continues to be the name of the game.
This race either pans out one of two ways from this point on. It either goes green the rest of the way and this becomes a fuel mileage race, which would not play in Raja Karuth's hands, or we get another yellow and it becomes a yellow festival towards the end of this thing, which I think would be everything Raja would want to see, because those yellow flags would allow him to conserve fuel and be good to go if we don't get a green-white checker. But if we start getting yellows, who's to say that we might not have a green-white checker anyway? So maybe 3 ways that this race can go at this point as TJ Majors clears Gary Sexton for second.
Nice pass there by TJ Majors. Again, working with that methodical sort of strategy to get around him, make a couple laps, try to see what Gary Sexton does, and then move for this pass. I think the biggest loser here, though, Pike, was this guy right here, the 19 of Robbie Lyons. He was second on this restart, right behind Gary Sexton before it all happened. Then the mishap with the pace car on the front straightaway kind of forced him to slow down, and then he lost all those positions. So Robbie Lyons could have been either in P2 or in the race lead, and that race start really hurt his chances with 23 to go.
Really did hurt him indeed. He was the one who paid dearly as Raja made the gains on that restart because, as you said, Robbie was the one who had to check up behind Gary Sexton, as Sexton certainly slowed right before we went back to green flag racing and lost a few spots. Credit to Lyons, though. He's still running in the 4th position, but for now, no issues here. Looks like Ruben Garcia ended up in trouble just a moment ago, and I think that might be race over for him. And indeed, he came off and turn 4, smacked the fence, and that's game over for the 03 car. So one more car done with this race. We can also tell you that Parker Kligerman will not defend his victory from a year ago. He is out of this race, as is the 20 car of David Schildhaus.
That's so unfortunate for them, and we had seen Kligerman and Schildhaus both utilize both or all of their fast repairs for this race, as they've been involved in some incidents tonight. And it's so unfortunate that with only 20 laps to go, with so little left in this race, they won't be able to at least contend for any type of position and be there. But I will say, all the way at the head of this field, don't look now. TJ Majors is starting to slowly creep his way to Raja Caruth. So although Caruth had the push out to the front, had a good amount of a gap to work with, now TJ Majors is all up on him trying to take it away.
TJ Majors might be in the prime position as it sits, because if this goes green the rest of the way, he can ride behind Raja Caruth and fuel save and probably be good to go to the end. The problem, though, is that Robbie Lyons is beginning to make a charge. He just got around Gary Sexton for the 3rd spot, and he's been gaining to the tune of about a 10th a corner. So this could be a 3-car battle for the race lead very quickly.
It can, and with the way Robbie Lyons moves his way past Gary Sexton, we didn't see that pass as we were looking a little bit further back in the field, but Lyons did make that pass for P3. We could definitely end up, James, seeing what we saw a little bit earlier where we looked at, I believe it was Melillo, DJ Cummings, and Will Rogers, where all three of them kind of crept up within each other, and they started all battling for position, which of course led to Will Rogers, DJ Cummings battling for the race lead, and you know what happens next. But we could definitely very well see Robbie Lyons utilizing a higher groove, get some of that clean air, start to pick back up. It could be a 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 horse race if they start to get in this draft.
This could get very intriguing. Lyons has chopped this gap down to the front 2. As you see, another run there. That looks like Anthony Alfredo losing a spot to Adam Cabot, who's beginning to make his charge to the front. We're inside of the final 20 laps of this race, presented by Tufco Flooring, as Alfredo works to the outside of Cabot on the inside, the ERL Master and the ERL Champion, wheel to wheel at Indy.
And they're doing some great racing right now, but they're losing a lot of that time to what could be used to get by Gary Sexton. And they're both trying to work for the top 5. Remember, we're within 18 laps to go. And like Mark Rabilla said earlier in the in-race supporter section, he said that he's expecting a lot of green-white checkered. So for late race yellows, you want to have a lot of this position. Even in Alfredo's and Cabot's case, you want to make passes for position, even if it's just 1 or 2 spots, because at the end of the day, once yellows start to fly, once things start to hype up and tension up to the end of the race, you're going to have that sort of leeway. You're going to have that advantage to the front of the field. I think that's what Alfredo and Cabot may be thinking about right now.
It's a very valid point for sure that these two might be waiting. The problem is that they've dropped off from Robbie Lyons, TJ Majors, and Raja Caruth. It's a solid 1.5 second gap as Sexton has dropped back. I think Sexton's already switched the fuel maps up. He knows he needs to save, but everybody else, for the most part, has the ability to go. So it's imperative for Alfredo, for Cabot, for Stephen Ellis, who's in the 7th spot. If they're going to have a shot at the win, and this stays green, they need to go and get around Gary Sexton right now.
They do, and when they were side by side, that does not help their case. I think luckily for them, they've simmered themselves through. They're both single file. Now they're finally starting to catch the driver of the 13. That was a little bit of a wasted time, though, to get around Gary Sexton on this stint. Now they're starting to hound through. You see the rear view camera from Gary Sexton's number 13 machine. There goes Anthony Alfredo. He's going to go to the inside. A bit of a pinch, but Alfredo tries to duck his nose through. Pass not complete just yet.
And all the while, they continue to lose time to Rowdy Lyons. They are stacked up here. It's a 1.7 second gap from Sexton to Lyons. And no way that Alfredo and company could get around Sexton and then gets the draft of Lyons. They all have to drag each other up. And now there's a battle between Alfredo and Cabot once again.
And Cabot's not letting go here, James. He does not want to stay behind the driver of this 38. The only problem is he's been using the high side. We've seen many drivers be victim of that outside wall. So Cabot has to be a little tactical, a little bit smart here. He's going to clear Alfredo for position. So a solid move to the front straightaway. He now has to try and work on Gary Sexton as most of the leaders work through. I think for right now, James, if you're a guy like Adam Cabot or maybe Alfredo or maybe even Rowdy Lyons in third, are you trying to still wait here with 15 to go to make any moves?
I don't know if you've got time to wait unless you're in the top three. If you're TJ Majors or Rowdy Lyons, I think you have some time, but everybody else has got to go. And I would have major concerns about the gap from Sexton to Lyons if you're anyone of Cabot or Alfredo. At this point, Gary Sexton, if you're the 17 or the 38, there's just a paperweight that's holding you down. He's running on a leader fuel map. We know he can't make it to the end if this goes green, so he's just backing everybody up. And ultimately, it's going to cost Cabot and Alfredo and everybody else that's part of this group a chance to win this race unless we get a yellow flag.
And right now you see everybody going right now for position. There's TJ Majors. He's going to go down low. He forced his way through Roger Caruth. Now Majors to the race lead.
TJ Majors up to the front. Will Caruth find a way to respond to the front straightaway? Or is he going to ride behind TJ Majors and maybe save a little bit of fuel himself? As we watch to see what happens for the race lead. There goes Caruth to the outside. And he'll get a good run on Majors to go around the high line to get it done. Rasha Caruth back to the race lead. Let's head down to Justin Prince.
And he has been very tense when it comes to his facial expression since these closing stages. He made it clear it's mere drive time, and that's why he's going as low in part all the way down to the bottom of the racetrack. He's been working with the spotter on weight checker settings, but a bit of contact.
And the nose is off. The wing is off the front nose of TJ Majors. Did he manage to get out of the gas to save it? But there's contact with TJ Majors, who is going to smack the fence, hit the wall. Is that going to bring out the yellow flag that might save Gary Sexton? Big questions here as Majors comes down to the inside and is going to drive it down pit road. No yellow flag, though. We stay green flag racing.
Oh, that is very big right there that they did not call for a yellow flag. Race control didn't. You see as you're riding on board with TJ Majors, he tried to move up top. Caruth tried to block. That's where the contact ensues. The wing comes off one of the sides of TJ Majors' car. Then from there, no turn whatsoever. Goes straight for the fence. Now Raja immediately went to race chat and said, my fault, my fault, my fault. But that was a very big development there with Majors and Raja Caruth. Two race leaders getting into contact again.
And I think Majors is also out of fast repairs too, so especially with the damage that he got to the right side of that car at the end of that wreck, that's game over, I think, for the 22 machine. As we now go on board with Devin Henry making a late charge from the 9th position as we are entering 10 laps to go in the Indiana 500K presented by Maconi Setup Shop. Here goes Henry trying to find a way around Ford Martin as Raja Caruth continues to lead this race. Rowdy Lyons sitting in second, waiting for his moment. And more than anything else, that contact between Majors and Raja Caruth, it brought Adam Cabot and company right back into this because the gap now is down to 1.1 seconds and closing. Adam Cabot is racing his way into the picture as they'll get 10 to go at the stripe.
That last restart cost him dearly, but now he's going to kick in the door, Biggie style, to the inside. Raja Caruth, they both make contact. Caruth to the outside wall. Lyons to the race lead. The question is, does Lyons have damage? Or does race control throw a yellow? No yellow right now. Caruth to the bottom of the track, and Lyons clear to the front.
Raja Caruth in trouble down on the inside of the racetrack as he makes contact with Rowdy Lyons, and the 19 goes to the front as the 3 will roll around the access road and will need a yellow flag to get back into contention.
And you'll see it here going to turn 1. I think similar to what we saw with DJ Cummings and Will Rogers there, James. Although they were pretty much side by side even at that point. They made wheel contact. And then Raja just goes straight for the outside wall. You're right on board here. This is the entrance to turn 1. Trying to arc it through. He gets in a Lyons. And goes right for the safer barrier. And at that point looks for space to go back down to the access road. And again, no yellow flag. So like we saw earlier with TJ Majors, Raja Caruth is going to suffer the same fate.
Raja Caruth in there, and I don't know whether or not he's got anything left in terms of fast repairs, so it could be over for him tonight. This now is Robbie Lyons versus Adam Cabot for the race lead. Gary Sexton now on the edge of his pit cycle. He may have to come down to pit road with the next few laps. He might not have a choice, and that would put Steven Ellis in the third position. But Lyons in front, Cabot closing, though. It's now down to 0.4 of a second with 9 laps to go.
And utilizing this trap, that's going to be big here as Cabot goes around one of the lap machines on the racetrack still. But we saw this a little bit earlier, James. The fact that Lyons had some distance between himself and Roger Caruth when TJ Majors was occupying second. Then the incident happens with TJ Majors. The time is lost. And then came Robbie Lyons to pounce for the race lead. We could very well see this exact same instance where Cabot has that opportunity to gain time as Lyons lost it with contact with Caruth. And now Cabot, the ERL champion, can try to get his first win in Monday Night Racing.
You see in the background of your screen is the leader snake. Gary Sexton finally comes down pit road, so that could be his bid in this race over. We're starting to whittle down the names that have a shot to get it done in the Indiana 500K for Monday Night Racing, presented by Maconi Setup Shop. Lyons still your leader, Cabot in second. Those two, 1, 2, and within maybe 2 or 3 car lengths. Steven Ellis is about 3 seconds back in third, but if these two get to racing for the lead, Ellis, Anthony Alfredo, Justin Malillo, everybody from third on back can get right back into the picture.
And then comes an even bigger question, James. If these two fighting for the lead, if they both make contact, if they both end up in an incident, does race control finally see it fit to throw a yellow? Those last times by with both Majors and Caruth, it was not time to throw a yellow. If these two make contact, do they throw that caution and give the opportunity for a potential green-white checkered? You saw Cabot with a big run to the front straightaway to turn 1. He did not make it happen. He's going to try to set for the straightaway this time.
He's waiting for his moment, and I think Adam Cabot's just going to try and race this in such a way that it is just going to be between these two. That's the goal, at least. However, we're watching the gap between Lyons and Cabot, and then Cabot and Ellis, and Ellis is beginning to close in. It's not by a lot, but it's just enough as we get some shade over in turn 4 of the racetrack, but all about Adam Cabot. And now here he goes. He couldn't deny the run this time. Cabot to the inside with 6 laps to go.
And a pass now. Going to try to set it with only 5 trips around this 2.5-mile oval, the famed Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Cabot to the inside. He makes his pass complete. Does Robbie Lyons make a move to the back straightaway? He will. No defense down to the bottom. The green machine. Tony Stewart throwback. There goes Robbie Lyons back down low.
It's dark green versus light green, and light green out in front. Lyons back ahead of Cabot. I think the gauntlet's been thrown between these two. It's time to race for the victory at Indianapolis, and will that drag Ellis and company back into this? That's the real question.
And now, if you're going to be making these moves, you saw how quick it was for Cabot to gain the lead and then lose it right after at the end of the racetrack. Does he wait a little bit more until maybe 2 laps to go, or the white flag to get to the end of this race and be the driver with the checkered flag and virtual milk at the end of it all? A little bit of tight movement out of turn 2. He's got some space. Does he build up the run here?
Cabot's going to get a run. I think he's going to sit in line, though. Ellis has not been able to close on these two any more than he was a lap or 2 ago. That gap is maintained consistent at about 3.2 seconds. So it's still Lyons v. Cabot as it stands. They'll come to the stripe. It'll be 3 laps to go at the racing capital of the world.
And now he's going to get this big run. He's going to make the move. No defense from Lyons. I think he understands that he's going to lose it for now, but he won't lose it later on. Actually, they'll stay side by side. As you see, Lyons use the banking. And again, we have another tight battle for the race lead. Does this result in contact? We'll have to find out as they head to the back.
Still there, wheel to wheel. They are right next to each other once again. And here comes Cabot to the inside to try and wrest away the race lead from Robbie Lyons at the closing stages. They both got loose, I think, in the middle of the exit of 3. And Cabot will slide back to P2 as we'll come to 2 laps to go at Indianapolis.
And now this is really important. We talked about whatever happens here with the weight jacker, how they can use the tools. Here is where it's going to be at its most crucial. Again, Cabot to the bottom of the track underneath Lyons. They won't hit the outside wall. They'll head back for the back straightaway this time.
Again, side by side. Again for the race lead in Indianapolis. Again, still too close to call. And again, Steven Ellis still has not been able to gate on these two. Lyons v. Cabot one more time. Who gets it in 3? Cabot noses ahead.
And again, he'll nose to turn 3. But again, we're seeing the draft play such a big factor. Lyons is in such striking distance that whatever happens, he'll be there. They'll come across to the white flag from the Brickyard.
One more lap in the Indiana 500K presented by Maconi Setup Shop as we get the MSS 1 to go. One more shot for Adam Cabot to maintain this race lead as Robbie Lyons gets tight in the middle of 1 and 2.
That's going to lose him a lot of time, James, but does this allow for a build-up out of turn 2 to the back straightaway? Some lap traffic ahead. I don't believe this will play a factor into the end of this race. Cabot with a nose ahead. He'll look to the mirrors, but at this moment, Cabot clear for the race lead.
One more chance for Robbie Lyons to get a run out of turn 4. It's going to have to be Al Unser Jr. style on the 1992 if he wants the victory. The last quarter here at Indianapolis. Lyons trying to get the run down the Fan Canyon. Here comes Adam Cabot to the stretch. Lyons will jump to the outside, but it won't be enough. Adam Cabot comes from the Esports Racing League, races his way into Monday Night Racing Season 3, and now is a Monday Night Racing winner in one of the biggest races of the season. He wins the Indiana 500K presented by Maconi Setup Shop and is $300 richer. And this has got to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest win of Adam Cabot's sim racing career. He raced his way in, and he's now top amongst the heap at the racing capital of the world.
Gets the win at a crown jewel event and does it 4 races into the season. He didn't have to wait any longer. We saw the strength out of Cabot from the drop of the green flag at Daytona. This is where he capitalizes the best, used that defense strategically, and now he can call himself a part of the column for Monday Night Racing winners. Adam Cabot, sure, this is emotional for him. Smiles from ear to ear. He gets to celebrate now with Virtual Milk.
It is the Magic Man's magic moments at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. A winner in Monday Night Racing is Adam Cabot, and I feel like we need to get him, I don't know. Keita Kusin came to the chat earlier and said that maybe if this is a 500K, we get like soy milk or almond milk instead of the full deal. But in either case, I cannot wait to talk to Adam because I know he will be nothing short of ecstatic after the way that race panned out.
And that's just the storyline there. You said it. Raced his way in from the Esports Racing League. A story about a driver who just goes in, goes for the qualifiers, able to perform, and performs at the highest level in the top series, able to get it done. Fantastic job at Cabot.
Adam Cabot, your winner, as we take a look at the full field rundown of this Indiana 500K presented by Maconi Setup Shop. Cabot, your race winner ahead of Robbie Lyons. Stephen Ellis with a fantastic run. I think that's a career best finish for him. He'll go P3. Anthony Alfredo was 4th. Another top 5 for him. Justin Malillo will take a top 5 in this race after the way this season has panned out. Ford Martin was 6th. Devin Henry brought that Jimmy Bryant throwback in 7th. With the 77 machine at the end of all this. Max Kennan was 8th. Drew Welker finished in the 9th position and 10th. Went to our BST in-race reporter, Mark Rubillas.
And back to 11th, Michael Massey. We hadn't really talked about him all race long. He goes from 29th on the grid to 11th to end this race. Gary Sexton, who made a trip down pit road, didn't have enough in that final segment, but nonetheless, he works with the top 12. Gabe Wood for JD Motorsports will end up in 13th, with Brett Baldeck behind him in 14th. He will be the last driver, mind you, on the lead lap, because then goes 1 lap down, 15th place Seth Egger. Garrett Smithley moves to 16th to end this. Joshua Slate 2 laps down at 11th, with Garrett Miller also 2 laps down in 18th, and then 3 laps down goes Steve Alfont to 19th. DJ Cummings, who had contact with Will Rogers earlier in this race, he ends up within the top 26 laps down.
Mike Clay was 21st at the end of this evening. Brandon Brown finished 22nd. 23rd went to Raja Karuth after he got that damage from the contact with Robbie Lyons and was done for the night. TJ Majors made contact with Raja Karuth and finishes right behind Raja in 24th. Ruben Garcia Jr. was 25th this evening. 26th went to James Bickford. Parker Kligerman cannot defend his victory in this race from a year ago. He finishes 27th. 28th went to David Schildhouse. 29th to Paul Sutton. And the Indiana native Chris Wilner finishes 30th. 31st this evening was your defending champion of Monday Night Racing, Will Rogers. Matt Stelneck was 32nd. Anders Krohn and Nick Sanchez complete the field for this 34 car field in the Indiana 500K. And now we turn our attention to Victory Lane at Virtual Indianapolis. Adam Cabot, can you believe what has just happened right now? You are a Monday Night Racing winner in one of the biggest Monday Night Racing events of them all.
I absolutely cannot believe it. I mean, coming to a couple laps to go and I don't even know how I ended up in the position to win it, honestly. I was really hoping that later in the season, when we got to some of the stock car races, like the Xfinity car and Cup car, I was hoping, all right, maybe I'll have a chance to win there, but I did not go in expecting that at all tonight. And it seemed like it was just an uphill battle all race, and it wasn't until just the final few laps that I realized I had a shot. And guys were wrecking out, some guys were pitting, and it's like, I don't even know how it happened, but all of a sudden I was in second place, and there was one car in front of me I had to chase down. And at that point, there was no, it was all take and no give. And me and Robbie just had an amazing battle there. I mean, I was absolutely out of control. I don't think you can come closer to almost wrecking an Indy car without not wrecking it. I just got so loose every time I tried to complete that pass, and every time I tried to make the pass, I would fiddle with my weight jacker, which I'm not used to messing with, and just try to find a setting that I could make it stick at the bottom. And then I moved it as low as I pretty much could, and just floored it and kind of closed my eyes and hoped for the best, and somehow it stuck. But no, I just absolutely cannot believe it. I was hoping later in the season, but tonight I was just trying to take it easy and not do anything dumb, and hope to find myself in the top 5, top 10 in case stuff got crazy at the end, and that's pretty much exactly what happened.
Was fuel a concern at the very end of this? Were you trying to save some fuel just to make sure you were good in the event that we had a late race yellow? And was that part of the reason why you tried to sit behind so many people at the end, or was it just the way it played out? You were just trying to go for it, and that's as far up the field as you could go?
It's just kind of the way it played out. Like, I know I ended up saving fuel by doing it, but I didn't think fuel was going to be that close. I thought I was 3 to 4 laps to the good and didn't really have to worry about it. I just didn't want to push too hard at the beginning of the run and have nothing left tires-wise at the very end. So I held back a little bit. I just did not feel comfortable at all on fresh tires, honestly. After restarts, I felt the car was just so unpredictable, and I didn't know what to do with the weight tracker, and I felt like it was best for me to just kind of chill out and wait in line and not do anything too erratic. But yeah, it ended up being so close on fuel towards the end, because when I was running Gary down, when you're in those packs of cars, you have to lift so much and you save so much fuel. And I'm not used to that coming from stock cars, where even at Daytona and Talladega, you're always in a pack, so the leader burns more fuel. But I had to burn so much fuel to catch up to Robbie. At that point, I was only like a lap to the good. And then I was in 5th gear the last probably 3 or 4 laps, so I'm sure I came really close on fuel, but at that point, I wasn't looking down at fuel. I was just doing everything I could to get the lead.
Were you worried about taking the lead a little bit too early when you made the pass as late as you did? Were you worried about Robbie trying to line up the run correctly to get around you right at the line? He certainly tried to.
Yeah, I was worried about that, and so much of it was just trying to guess the line that the guy in front of you was going to take, and he was doing a good job playing defense. He would try to guess if I was going to go high or go low, because the last thing you want to do is be in the wake of the car in front of you. And there's a couple times where he guessed I was going to go high, and he took high while he was in first place, and I just lost all my momentum, all my ground. But then I ended up getting by him just because he thought I was going to go high, and then I went low. And that last lap there, I knew that as long as I didn't guess wrong which line he was going to run for all 4 corners, that I probably was going to be able to hold him off. But yeah, it's still just absolutely unreal that it all just kind of played out and worked out in the end.
Because you said to Justin Prince before the race that you're a stock car guy. You know stock cars. You don't necessarily know much about how to run an Indy car on an oval, much less anywhere else. And then here you are in victory lane at the end of this. So what does that say to you that you're able to figure this thing out as quickly as you did and win tonight?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that was my first race in the IR18 car. But I think a lot of guys in this league, I don't really know how many dedicated IndyCar guys there are in this league. So I think a lot of us were sort of on the same playing field, trying to figure out. I'm used to fixed racing being fixed racing. There's nothing to do with the setup. But then I kept learning that, well, no, there's the weight jacker, and then there's apparently some other things you can adjust on, which I didn't touch. But so that was the most difficult thing, trying to wrap my head around that. And I don't know, I just really tried to take it easy for most of the race. But then once I got wrecked running in the top 5, I had to charge pretty hard to get to the lead, or well, just to get up into like the top 10 there. And once I got in the top 10, I just kind of backed off, and you know, I was going to be happy with the 6th, 7th, 8th place finish. I'm like, this will be great for points. It's double points. And then, like I said, just some guys I think had to pit, and some guys ran into trouble, maybe pushed a little bit too hard, burned up their stuff, crashed, and all of a sudden it was like there was one car in front of me, and I knew what I had to do.
Amongst all the things you've done in your sim racing career, does this win sit at the top of everything? Is this the biggest thing you've ever done in sim racing?
Oh, by far. I mean, it's not even a slight doubt or anything. I mean, this is, I don't think it's definitely not sunk in yet at all. I mean, that is just a very mentally taxing race, because you're just on the edge the whole race, and you're always thinking about the lines of the cars in front of you. You're thinking about what you're doing with your weight jacket. You're thinking about your fuel. There's all these different settings. You're just thinking 100% of the time. And there's really, besides from the cautions, there's really no room to catch a break at all. So it definitely hasn't sunk in yet. But I mean, by far, this is just, this is just unreal.
Final question for you. We had a few comments in chat suggest that this being a 500K instead of a 500, maybe we get you some almond milk or soy milk. But what sort of milk are you drinking at the end of this? Whole 2%, half and half, soy, almond, shea butter? Who knows? What's the milk of choice for Monday Night Racing Indiana 500K winner Adam Cabot?
If this were if I had it and this were real Indy, I'd be drinking whole milk just to kind of stick with tradition. But right now, the only milk I have in my fridge is a little bit of almond milk that hopefully is not expired. But I don't care if it's expired. I guess I got to drink it, don't I?
You can worry about feeling an upset stomach afterwards. It doesn't replace the sweetness of victory at Indianapolis in the IndyCar. The Magic Man, Adam Cabot, your winner tonight. Adam, thanks so much for your time, and congratulations. You're a Monday Night Race winner, and oh, by the way, $300 richer too.
Oh my God, yeah, I actually forgot about that. That's incredible. Really appreciate being in this league. Thanks to Anthony Alfredo, Ford, and also shout out to DJ Cummings, who really helped me get up to speed in this car. He's the one who taught me that we even had a weight jacker in the car. I didn't even know that we could do that with fixed setups. So big shout out to him. He was a big help to me in preparing for this race. Thanks to Lawn Tech. Thanks to everyone who supports me and watches what I do. And this definitely hasn't sunk in yet, but I appreciate it.
Adam Cabot, Indiana 500K winner. Get used to saying that. I think we'll be coming back to that one in 2022. But for now, we'll turn to P2. Kenneth Plano is caught up with the runner-up in tonight's race, Rowdy Lyons.
Here, Robbie Lyons, a strong run all the way to the end, comes home with a P2 finish. Robbie, I know it went down to the final laps. It was you and Cabot side by side, trading positions, whatever it may be. What was really necessary there in those final laps to keep pace with Cabot, to stay there, put that pressure on, especially with the fact that you guys were side by side for a good amount of that?
I tell you, man, that was the most intense game of chicken I've ever played. It's exactly what it was. You know, I was mirror driving more there than probably I've ever done. It felt like a plate race almost, where I would have to guess which line he was going to take on corner entry, all 4 corners, and you know how long the straightaways are at Indy. You know, if I didn't guess the right line one time, he had that toe all the way down the straightaway, and there at the end, you know, he just cleared me enough. I know exactly where I messed up. I missed my shift from 5th to 6th. I wasn't doing it when I was out front the whole time, but he was close enough alongside that if I had shifted up there, I think I could have stayed alongside. But when he cleared me, it was back to, you know, him being the guy that could make the moves, and I just guessed the wrong line, the wrong time, but I almost got him that last lap. I thought it was over. I got so tight in turn 1 after the white, but you know, long laps at Indy, long way to go back to the start-finish line, and you know, it's all the way down towards turn 1. So I knew I've seen it enough in real life, especially with the old car, the DW12, where a guy could be, I don't know, you know, a quarter of a lap behind and get enough of a tow in 1 lap to get there. So got my head back on straight and got that run back up to his gearbox. I guess it's not a bumper there at the end, and just came up a little short. But what a race! As much as it sucks to be tight in the air, having the tool, the weight jacker, to be able to kind of put it back into your own hands and work that all race long. Took 124 laps of practice basically, and Adam came out on top, and I'm pumped for him.
I can imagine it was very interesting with the way you had to set this up mentally. For it wasn't 500 miles, it wasn't 200 laps, but it was 500 kilometers. It was 125 laps, still a relatively long event. And to come with the super speedway mentality, we had a lot of attrition tonight. There were a lot of wrecks, a lot of guys unfortunately taken out. You end up, however, with both fast repairs still under your pocket, and you were able to race this entire one clean and end up in the top 3. Did that sort of super speedway mindset mentality help? Because I reckon you finished second at Daytona to start this season. That was also a super speedway race, a P2 over there. It comes with a P2 over here.
Yeah, gosh. It's too many P2s. I know we'll get one here eventually, as the season goes on. I'm not sure if you have any other super speedways left, but yeah, that mindset, I think the biggest thing in Indy, and obviously I've never driven in an Indy car or any open wheel car besides a go-kart. Well, I guess kind of legend cars, but we don't race at these high speeds. It's all about give and take. There were times when, I had that run and I chose to check up instead, because it just wasn't. You just get that feeling that it's not the ideal time yet, and I know being patient, especially in these long races. I love the longer races. I was talking to Stevie Ellis down there, and the more laps, the more it falls into my wheelhouse, because I feel like I'm a very patient driver and I take care of my stuff. A lot of short track races or sprint races, it might not play into my favor, just because maybe I could be a little more aggressive, but it definitely paid off tonight. I think if you're too aggressive, y'all saw early what happened, because it's a razor's edge with the Indy cars and with the weight jacker, and if you cross that line, there's no saving it. So yeah, a lot of give and take. I'm glad the second half of that race there, I feel like we saw a lot of it, and that's just a testament to the drivers we have here in MNR.
Well, this will certainly help you in the point standings. You came into this race 12th in the standings, just shy of the playoff cutoff, and now I'm assuming that this P2 will really help that out in the longer run. But now we turn to a way different style of racing, lighter cars, lower power, and a smaller track, and a road course at that. The MX-5s heading to Lime Rock. Is there any sort of strategy, any sort of mindset you can think of to go into that race on June 7th to try to capture a win on the road course?
Practice, 100%. I'm going to be making laps all week long. I guess the next 2 weeks. Get as many laps in that car as I can, and around that track. It's a fun track. Very, very flowy. You carry a lot of speed through the corners, and those MX-5s, it's all about momentum. So I think it might fall into my wheelhouse a little more than the Pro 2 trucks did at Watkins Glen. I think it's no secret I'm not a road course racer whatsoever, but maybe in 2 weeks here I will be.
We'll have to see what happens, but nonetheless, you walk away $100 richer here in Indianapolis, P2, with a good amount of points on your way. I must feel that that's a lot of optimism, a lot of outlook on what's going to go down in the future. Congratulations on your P2 finish here, Robbie, and of course, we're wishing you the best of luck going into the MX-5s at Lime Rock in 2 weeks, and of course, wishing you a safe and happy Memorial Day weekend.
Thank you guys as well, and I want to thank obviously Kligerman Esport, Parker Kligerman, Kyle Dagger over there, and Valvoline, all the guys that come on to help me, and my spotter Lucas Cram, he was on it tonight, so can't thank those guys enough. Thank you guys.
Robbie Lyons comes home P2 at the end of it all, sporting that Tony Stewart throwback. A fantastic finish nonetheless. He ends up second, James. A great finish for him. That super speedway mind really helped in the end.
It did help in the end, and I think a bit of longevity more than anything else. Up Stephen Ellis out of Toronto, Ontario. He finishes third tonight in what is I believe, a career best finish for Stephen in Monday Night Racing. And you were talking with Robbie a little bit before you came up here. You said that the longer races suit you a little bit better. Why is that? What plays into your hands in a longer race like this that doesn't necessarily go your way in a sprint race, you think?
That's a good question. Honestly, I've always been a big races, the 500 milers, stuff like that, just because I can be very patient with it, kind of watch the strategies play out, and I usually have a good spotter or strategist with me that's helping out. So today I had the Bryant and Maconi, and we really kind of came up with a plan that I think if there were a few less cautions, really would have worked out in our favor. But we were just patient with it. I spent a whole stint actually in fuel map 8, the full fuel map mode, or the full fuel saving mode there. So just kind of keeping care of the car, and it worked out.
I guess in a sense, it can't be too much of a surprise that we have a Canadian doing well in an IndyCar at Indianapolis. Jacques Villeneuve heads that list, of course, as the winner of this race in 1995. But you think back through the years and some of the greats that have competed in IRL and IndyCar now. You think of Paul Tracy, the late Greg Moore, amongst some of the ones who have made their names, James Hinchcliffe, of course. So I have to believe in that sense that maybe this combo means a little bit more to you, and maybe gets you a little bit more motivated, just because we know that Canada has a strong tradition in open wheel racing, no?
Absolutely. I think it was 6 years ago I attempted my first Indy 500 in iRacing, and yesterday I was able to win in the one of the official races, so that was pretty cool, and it's had a lot of momentum going for today. I wear the red gloves like Greg Moore and James Hinchcliffe. It just kind of helps that my whole suit is Spider-Man, but yeah, it's this IndyCar at any big oval is one of my favorite combinations on the sim, and I love doing it, so it's this one meant a lot to have a good run.
All right, so we need to see the red gloves, no doubt about that. Pictures incoming on Twitter somewhere, just for the proof, because the red gloves are pretty handy. And as you step back away from this is like it will be for Rowdy Lyons, going to be a big boost in the points. We're off next week, but as we begin the summer stretch run, how do you like the way you finished tonight as a springboard to get you potentially into the playoffs come July?
Yeah, it's definitely helpful. I'm a big road course guy, so I'm looking forward to a few of the ones coming up, like Lime Rock and Road America, and just kind of making the most of it. Last year was kind of a tough one after just coming 5th place in points in the first year. So last year it was kind of a rough. Had a couple bad runs to start the season, so this really helps. And again, this was the one I really circled on as one I wanted to do well in. And when I went a lap down early in the race, it looked kind of not going so well, but it worked out in the end. So I'm hoping this is kind of a springboard for what I know I'm able to do. Just I need a bit of luck along the way.
And final question, and a fun one here before we let you go. We know that you may or may not have a vested interest in a certain game that involves some ice and a puck, and sticks and pads and all that sort of stuff. And we also know that those of us who paid attention to the Stanley Cup playoffs know that the Colorado Avalanche have to be the odds-on favorites to win. But if there's another team that we should be paying attention to outside of the Avs, got any tips for us?
Well, first off, I was mad that the Leafs and Habs decided to play a game tonight, because that's a series I'm following the most, but I had it on a separate screen beside me. But I picked Vegas to win the Stanley Cup. I know it hasn't been a perfect run, but I'm going to hold on to that, and Tampa could pull off this win tonight against Florida. Again, I'm really liking them, but it's going to be hard to topple the Colorado Avalanche right now. They're just kind of on fire, and they're doing everything right.
Speed like Nathan McKinnon to the front of the field, right? We'll go with it at least.
I like it.
As of now, it's Stephen Ellis who gets P3, and you heard it from himself. If you don't have the Avs, maybe Vegas, maybe Tampa, if you still got a line out on a Stanley Cup bet. But for now, Stephen, congratulations on your podium finish, one of your best finishes in Monday Night Racing, and thanks for the time this evening. Go watch all the hockey to your heart's content. After a run tonight like that, you've earned it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, guys.
Stephen Ellis, P3, and goodness, what a race. What an Indiana 500K. Kenneth Bueno, we had everything. We had wrecks, we had runs, we had high drama moments, and at the end of it, a genuinely fantastic battle of skill and strategy between Rowdy Lyons and Adam Cabot. And Cabot becomes the first driver from the ERL and the first properly sim-based driver, not really too many real-line connections, to come into Monday Night Racing and win a race. A very special evening for Monday Night Racing all the way around.
It definitely was, and we had all of the action. We had potential fuel strategy, we had some long green flag runs, we had amazing side-by-side battling, not only throughout the field before the race lead. We don't really see that too much here in most races, and in the Indianapolis 500, that's exactly where it was. In the Indiana 500K here tonight, that's where it was as well. and just a great display of just conservatism and strategy, everything within the cards. You saw guys like Robbie Lyon, Adam Cabot, as we were trying to stay clean, survive to the end. That's exactly what we saw. At the end of the day, I don't think we can complain whatsoever about that finish, because it was really tense all the way to the end.
A great finish at the end, and Adam Cabot gets the victory. He also gets $300 as part of his victory this evening, with some money going to Robbie Lyons and Stephen Ellis as well. So, a part of the extra prize fund that the folks at Napa have brought on board as part of Season 3 of Monday Night Racing. Almost time to go, but before we do, some events that we can tell you about over the course of the next week. Action from iRacing this week continues with the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series from Charlotte Motor Speedway. The Coca-Cola 300, longest race of the season for them tomorrow night. Pre-race coverage begins at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Race coverage at 9 on twitch.tv/iRacing, as well as iRacing's YouTube and Facebook pages. Then Wednesday night, a doubleheader. PCA Sim Racing comes to you for the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course on the PCA Sim Racing YouTube channel at 8 p.m. Eastern. Then at 9 p.m. Eastern, it's the Dirt Sprint Car Championship Series from the dirt version of the linear race place. You can see that race on the Podium 2 Twitch channel, as well as the Podium Facebook and YouTube pages. Saturday night, it's the Midwestern Sim Racing Association Premier Series, round number 15 from Charlotte Motor Speedway. That race coming to you at 7 p.m. Eastern, Saturday, May 29th. Again, the Podium 2 Twitch, the Podium Facebook, the Podium YouTube, if you want to watch that. Sunday night, it's the MPI Cup Series from Talladega to close out the round of 12 in their playoffs. You'll see that race at 9:15 p.m. Eastern on the Podium Esports Twitch channel. Kenneth Bueno going to be the call for that one, alongside Devin Hendry and Michael Gaviria. And then next Wednesday night, a very special race. The Next Gen Cars return to the eNASCAR Pro Invitational iRacing Series on the Chicago Street Course that was announced earlier in the spring. We're going street racing in Grant Park, the virtual Grant Park, that is, but it should be a spectacle nonetheless. And you'll be able to find that broadcast on Fox Sports 1 in the United States and Fox Sports Racing in Canada. Time to say goodbye to the racing capital of the world for Season 3 of Monday Night Racing. The Indiana 500K, presented by Maconi Setup Shop, goes to Adam Cabot. And before we sign off, we'd like to pay our respects and say thank you to all of the members of the armed forces serving in the United States, and many, many, many thanks all around for all of your service to our great nation. We hope that you all enjoy your Memorial Day weekend and watch all the racing to your heart's content. Indianapolis and Charlotte coming up on Sunday, in a bit of a different Sunday this year. We had 5 Sundays, as a matter of fact, in May in 2021, which means Monaco actually gets to jump off on its own weekend, as it did the previous weekend. Just yesterday, we had the Monaco Grand Prix, but enjoy watching all the real-life racing. It'll start at 11 a.m. Eastern on Sunday and run all the way through the evening Sunday night. One of the best race days of the year. We hope you enjoy watching it. We look forward to seeing you when we take the MX-5s to Lime Rock in 2 weeks' time. For Ford Martin, Paul Sutton, and Josh Mendoza at Monday Night Racing. For Cisco Scaramuzza, Gary Sexton, and John Theodore at Podium Esports. For our producer this evening, Ryan Bauer. Our camera builder, Dougie Beard. And for our pit reporter this evening, Justin Prince, and pre-race host Taylor Burris. And for my colleague in the booth, Kenneth Bueno, I am James Pine, the voice of Podium Esports. Thank you so much for watching our broadcast of the Indiana 500K, presented by Maconi Setup Shop, from Monday Night Racing, presented by Napa Auto Parts. Congratulations to Adam Cabot, $300 winner, or richer, as a Monday Night Racing winner.